the NASDAQ and S&P, and 3 for the Dow. Boeing thought in June that it was nearly done with fixing the 737 MAX flight control software until its own pilots tested the fixes, and the flight simulator nearly crashed in the same way the 2 real-world jets did. Bloomberg reports the failed simulator test was a factor in the months of delay since. First-time homebuyers are getting older. The median age of first-timers is now 33. That's the oldest since the National Association of Realtors started keeping track in 1981. The Realtors Group says high home prices and rising student loan debt make it more difficult for buyers. Elisa Parenti, Bloomberg Radio.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
You know your body, and you know when something's off, when something doesn't feel quite right. Don't ignore symptoms like fatigue, joint pain, rashes, and fever. They could be signs of lupus. Listen to your body. Take care of yourself. We're here to help you take control of your health. Learn how at BeFierceTakeControl.org. Brought to you by the Lupus Foundation of America and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
We could call it Bloomberg Awesome, but Bloomberg Best is accurate and less embarrassing to say.
Analysts are raising questions about rising competition and higher costs.
June Grosso and Ed Baxter.
It is the first company to go public in the space tourism industry.
Bloomberg Best.
That was AutoNation CEO Cheryl Miller.
Weekday evenings at 5 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
From New York, this is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. For Bloomberg First Word News, we go now to Mark Crumpton.
David, Boeing thought it was close to finishing a software redesign for its grounded 737 MAX jet over the summer, but problems with simulated flights delayed the planned relaunch for months. Bloomberg has learned that a simulated computer glitch caused the plane to dive aggressively. It resembles the problem that had caused a pair of deadly crashes months earlier. Boeing was forced to overhaul the plane's flight computers. President Trump is set to rewrite the rules on vaping. In remarks at the White House today, he announced plans for new regulations on e-cigarettes and vaporizers in the United States.
We're going to be coming out with a very important position on vaping. We have to take care of our kids, most importantly. So we're going to have an age limit of 21 or so. But we'll be coming out with something next week.
Meanwhile, the head of the White House Domestic Policy Council, Joe Grogan, calls the FDA's regulation of tobacco, quote, a huge waste of time. He says the agency should focus on approving and monitoring new drugs. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has appointed hardline politician Naftali Bennett as defense minister in his caretaker government. Netanyahu's move appears aimed at shoring up opposition to attempts by his chief rival to form Israel's next government. Benny Gantz is trying to piece together a majority coalition government after inconclusive elections in September. Netanyahu has since tried and failed to do so. Lawyers for Brazil's former president Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva have begun legal procedures requesting his release from prison. The move follows a Supreme Court decision that a person can be imprisoned only after all appeals to higher courts have been exhausted. Lula has been detained since April of 2018 after being convicted of corruption. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg. David?
Thank you so much, Mark. We have a Bloomberg scoop right now. Carl Icahn is said to plan a proxy fight at Occidental Petroleum. Remember that Mr. Icahn has been very critical of the CEO of Occidental Petroleum and the management there, thinking about their major acquisition, what they've been doing, and now it appears that he may be following through on his criticism by actually launching a proxy fight. You can see the stock of Occidental Petroleum on the news is up about 2% now. So it's responding to the news that Carl Icahn is planning a proxy fight to take over control of Occidental Petroleum. Now I want to turn back to Ukraine. We've seen a transcript of one call that President Trump had with Ukraine President Zelensky. Now it turns out there's a second call and a second transcript coming from last April. Mr. Trump now says that he's willing to release that transcript as well. It may be hard to remember through all this that this came about because Congress was actually trying to help Ukraine by providing it with military aid. For the perspective from Ukraine, we welcome now Global Affairs Analyst Michael Persirku. Over the telephone, he is a former spokesperson for the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. Welcome, Michael. It's great to have you back with us. We don't hear much from how this all looks from Ukraine's point of view, what this has done to Ukraine. Give us really what it means for President Zelensky and the government over there.
Mm-hmm. Hi, David. Good to be with you. Well, I can tell you on the surface here, everything is really quite calm, but Zelensky was out very early this morning speaking at the Kiev International Economic Forum ahead of Jack Ma, by the way, and he was basically pumping up the country, giving it the typical promotion that it's, a lot of IT skills, things like this. But I can tell you, speaking to a lot of sources and diplomats here, there's real chaos inside the administration of how to deal with his erratic Trump foreign policy and also with the widening scandal coming out of Washington. The big problem they have here, of course, is on the one hand, they're trying to promote Ukraine as a new investment destination and so on. But on the other hand, I've said this time and time again, every time Trump and his inner circle open their mouths about Ukraine, they describe it as a kind of cesspool of corruption. So it's very, very difficult without having a specific strategy to overcome that day-to-day barrage of bad PR.
So, Michael, I want to come back to the corruption issue in a moment, but first let's talk about exactly what gave rise to all this. As I understand it, it was military aid being provided by the United States because Ukraine, of course, does have a large Russian bear that sometimes can flex its muscle over there. Is the military aid flowing now from the United States, and what is the security situation with respect to Ukraine?
Right. Yes, the aid is flowing. Of course, these things take some time because don't forget a lot of this aid was for the lethal weapons, which Ukraine has been begging for a long time, including under the Obama administration. But, there's going to have to be capacity building, that sort of thing going on with military. At the moment, as we speak, it's an extremely sensitive time. I can't overemphasize it because there are four-party talks right now involving Ukraine, Russia, and European partners to bring finally peace to eastern Ukraine. Now, there have been two kind of mini ceasefires and disengagements that have been successful, but because it's such a sensitive topic here in Ukraine of basically granting possibly semi-autonomy to the areas of Ukraine occupied by the Russian rebels, that Zelensky seems to be backtracking a bit and going slower. If I can add one more quick thing, it's always been the case, always in negotiations with Russia, is that the Ukraine has always counted on the backing of the United States diplomatically, military, and of course with NATO. But that seems to be slipping away under the Trump White House, and there's a lot of anxiety about what to do next.
We're talking with Michael Persirku. He's the Global Affairs Analyst. He's coming to us on the telephone, actually from Kyiv over in Ukraine. Let's turn back to that question of corruption, because to some extent that also gave rise to this exchange that we know about between President Trump and President Zelensky, a perception that there has been corruption in Ukraine. As I remember, when President Zelensky was elected, he was a bit of an outsider, wasn't expected to be, wasn't part of his campaign actually to address that corruption. Is he doing that?
Well, you're right. It was the main campaign platform, too. There were two planks. One was to bring peace to Eastern Ukraine, and then the other one was to drain the swamp. He actually loves to use Trump's term, and clean up corruption. Of course, easier said than done in a place like this where it's basically controlled by a lot of crooked oligarchs, and the system has been in place for quite some time. But slowly, progress is being made. I don't think international donors or the general public are pleased at the pace. They'd like things to move quicker. But I have to say, ironic is it not, that in this whole call that you referred to with the Trump, between Trump and Zelensky, that was actually Trump kind of suggesting to Zelensky to be corrupt and to, as a favor, put these Biden associates under investigation. So it's a real big problem for this new administration. They're basically dealing with a president who is dealing with foreign policy as if he'd be dealing with a casino transaction in Atlantic City, a kind of mobster mentality, pressuring people, being very transactional. So not easy at all.
So Michael, where does Ukraine think it can get foreign direct investment from? Where is it looking to? Is it China? Is it Europe? Where are they looking to?
Well, really all over, especially the United States. Technology today and in many other fora I've attended here is the big buzzword. There are so many engineers, tech specialists graduating every year. So the talent is here. The costs are low. Energy costs, as Jack Ma pointed out today, are very low. But the problem is you also have a huge brain drain. A lot of people leaving for either better salaries or that first or second stage funding. The other big thing here, and China is looking at it, is agriculture, pork, wheat, but also, as we speak, China is trying to still push a purchase of a huge aerospace engine manufacturing here in Ukraine. It's called Motor Seats. They produce engines for helicopters and for aircraft. The United States is blocking that because they think that this technology may be put to bad uses and maybe it's unsold to Russia, that sort of thing. So Ukraine, as it kind of matures and grows up, it's getting caught in these kind of geopolitical struggles, even debates over 5G and whether Huawei should be allowed in. So not an easy path to navigate for such a young presidency.
Okay, Michael, thank you so much for being with us. Always helpful to have you here. That's Global Affairs Analyst Michael Boshirko reporting from Ukraine. Coming up, turning the screws on big tech. One of President Trump's big supporters in Silicon Valley discusses what Congress is getting wrong with possible tech regulation. Sun Microsystems co-founder Scott McNealy joins us next. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
Full breakfast? Cup of coffee?
What if your email let you see a project's entire history and not just the messages sent to you? What if everyone else on your team could see it as well? Then it wouldn't be email at all. Move communication from inboxes to channels in Slack. Instead of seeing a partial set of messages about a project, everyone in Slack sees exactly the same thing and moves work forward faster. Slack. Choose a better way to work. Get started at slack.com.
At Argos, get them the toys they're dreaming of this Christmas. Save 20% when you spend £20 or more on toys with code TOYS20, including top brands like Peppa Pig and Lego. Enjoy same-day home delivery 7 days a week. With Argos, you're good to go. Offer ends the 12th of November, subject to availability. Exclusions apply. Delivery conditions apply. Order by 6 p.m, 90% UK coverage.
Teaching shapes lives. If you're considering a career in teaching, you could be eligible for a £26,000 tax-free training bursary. Find out about the financial support to help you start your career in the classroom. Teaching. Every lesson shapes a life. Search Get Into Teaching. Bursary subject to eligibility. Selected subjects only.
This winter, why not take the short flight from London to Dublin with Aer Lingus from just $32.99 each way as part of a return trip. From coastal walks to cozy pubs and friendly locals, you'll find so much to enjoy once you're there. Smart takes a Dublin city break. Smart flies Aer Lingus. Book now at airlingus.com. Terms and conditions apply.
The S in Audi S-Line stands for many things like sporty, stylish, streamlined, and now seductively priced. Like the new Audi A4 S-Line, which you can now have from £359 per month, £2,154 initial rental. Test drive one at your local Audi centre, but you'll have to be swift. The offer ends soon. Search Audi S-Line. Audi, Vorsprung durch Technik. With 48-month contract hire, 10,000 miles per annum, 18s and over, subject to status. Damage charges may apply. No ownership. Ordered by 31st of December 2019 from participating centres. Audi Financial Services. Visit audi.co.uk.
Whether you're waiting for a train or a takeaway, with Tesco Mobile you don't have to wait for a brilliant deal. Our best ever Black Friday event is on. This week you can get a Samsung Galaxy A50 for just $17.49 a month. That's our lowest ever price. Get yours by the 10th of November. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Best ever Black Friday based on range of products in promotion was £18.99, now £17.49. 36-month credit agreement, rolling monthly usage agreement, subject to status. Various policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Good. Here's a swing and a drive deep to right field. Looking up. Goodbye, baseball.
Between game-winning shots and walk-off homers, follow TuneIn on social media to discover the latest and greatest in live sports.
With the 24th pick in the 2019 NFL Draft.
From live reminders that the biggest MLB games are on the air, to recommendations of the best new sports talk shows and podcasts.
He's going to be fine. He's going to be good right away in 3 years.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
In the dictionary, a podcast is this: a digital audio file made available on the internet, typically as a series of which new installments can be received by subscribers automatically. But on TuneIn, a podcast is this.
I'm Rachel Martin with David Green, and this is Up First from NPR News.
And it's defined like this.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show.
From news, sports, to pop culture, comedy, and beyond. Define your own podcast possibilities on TuneIn.
College football is live on TuneIn. Listen for free to games from more than 140 schools all season long.
To the 10, all the way to the checkerboard.
This Saturday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, number 1 LSU is taking on number 2 Alabama with a battle between LSU's quarterback Joe Burrow and Alabama's QB Tua Tagovailoa. Both are potential number 1 picks in the NFL Draft. Listen to every call and every game of your school all season long for free on TuneIn. Just search college to listen today.
Ah, finally another commercial, said no one ever. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade now and get over 45 commercial-free music stations.
In the stock market and in life, everything can change from one minute to the next. Be the first to hear the latest money news and market trends with CNBC on TuneIn. Wherever your day takes you, listen to CNBC's full slate of programming, including shows like Fast Money, Squawk Box, and Mad Money with Jim Cramer. And when the next big business story breaks, CNBC lets you know with live updates and commentary. At the office, at home, or on the go. Search CNBC on TuneIn to listen.
Hey, can't watch the big NBA game because your life's just too busy? I've got some news for you. TuneIn Premium is the answer to all your problems. Hear every home and away game live or on demand everywhere you go. Just search NBA to listen.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Where people are moving, and we can do targeted advertising of people who are going through some life change that would create a need. We have so much more information and can drive that into a much lower cost. We're gonna basically turn that whole industry upside down.
So Scott, you said it right at the top that you were a disruptor of sorts. How do you go about disrupting an entire industry? How do you market it? How do you get the word out? How do you dislodge existing relationships?
Well, I get on TV here to one of the most famous TV stations ever, Bloomberg, and share. Everybody should go to the Rex website and check and sell your house on it or buy your house. I'm listing my house on it, for instance. It's a great way to go. The second thing we do is we raise a lot of capital, and we've raised over $75 million of capital. Third, we've got an unbelievable board of advisors on this company with people from McDonald's and Google and a whole bunch of other really, really talented people who are helping us drive this out into the market. And then word of mouth is just getting out there. This thing is growing very quickly, and we've opened up in just about all of the major markets in the United States. So it's growing very quickly. The market's going to tip to this kind of an environment. We think we're going to be the market recipient of that tippage, if you will.
and you and your fellow tech people have taught us new words such as the network effect and things like that. As a result, we've got some tech companies who've gotten awfully big. Maybe Rex will get that big someday. But we've got the Alphabets or Googles of this world. We've got Facebook and things like that. There's a lot of push for regulation back here. And in fact, some people like Facebook say there should be some form of regulation. Where are you on that? Do we need the government to have some structure put around the big tech companies?
Well, I just, if the government's here to help, I cringe. And I've become much more of a small government person the older I get. And I've watched the federal budget, for instance, go from $70 billion when I was born to $4.7 trillion next year. I think we need to cut back on regulation. I think Congress moves at the speed of Congress, not at the speed of the internet, and I think they'll get it wrong. I don't want to see private companies being managed and free speech being managed by the government through private companies. So I've not been a favorite of breaking up Facebook. That's not the issue. I don't think I said a long time ago, you have no privacy, get over it, and that tweaks people in a lot of different ways. It's the truth. But I don't believe if you're getting a free product like from Facebook that you're the customer, you are the product in that space, and you shouldn't have an expectation that your data is going to be free. I tell my boys, I have 4 boys, anything that gets captured digitally with you involved in it, whether you do it or somebody takes it, becomes a digital tattoo and very, very hard to erase. The only people that have ever been able to erase anything is the 30,000 Clinton emails. That's the only thing I know of that's actually gotten erased on the internet. But breaking it up is not going to be the problem. And trying to regulate, I always get frustrated with the phrase hate crime. What's a hate crime? How do you define that? I think a crime is hateful no matter what, no matter what level. It's different levels of hateful. How do you define that? And I don't want the government, we have freedom of speech, and I think we need to get the political discourse off of social and onto a more neutral site. And I've suggested to multiple people that we need to create the equivalent of NPR, public broadcasting system,
or BBC
for that political conversation, something that's a .org and independent and open.
Right. We're talking with Scott McNeely. He's co-founder of Sun Microsystems. Let's put aside regulation of the content of speech for a moment, Scott, and talk about innovation. Because one of the concerns that's been expressed is that, in fact, if you get too big, actually it really curtails innovators from coming up behind and competing with you. That certainly was expressed in the old trusts. If you go back to Standard Oil and some of the real concerns about monopolization, that was the concern. There's no opportunity. Are you seeing any of that? Are you seeing a curtailing of innovation and success?
That's a great question, and I think it's a pertinent question, because really, what does Facebook really keep me from doing in my life? Well, there's lots of ways to take a picture of my dinner and share that. So I'm not feeling like I have freedom or loss of choice on where to post a picture of my dessert. And I have lots of ways of communicating to people. And the people that might be upset that they have very little choice are advertisers, because digital advertising is three-fourths of it is Google and Facebook, and they're gaining share. So they might have a beef, but the consumer, you don't have to use Facebook, you don't have to use Twitter, you don't have to use Google products. I don't use the Google browser, for instance. So you can survive. I don't think innovation is stopped in biotech or in autonomous vehicles or anything because of those companies. So I think innovation continues to truck. So I don't think that's a big issue.
Okay, Scott, I really appreciate you being with us. It's very interesting. It's Scott McNeely. He's co-founder of Sun Microsystems. Coming up here, the fall of the wall. We head to Berlin as Germany confronts big challenges 30 years after a pivotal moment in history. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
They're excited by business changes.
Are you finding the talent that you need?
They're thrilled by tech developments.
What would surprise people about where AI is going?
But what really makes Carol Masser and Jason Kelly happy is telling you about all of it.
This is an industry that is in demand.
Bloomberg Business Week.
What will society ultimately decide?
Weekday afternoons at 2 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Right now, Doctors Without Borders medical teams are operating in some of the most remote and dangerous corners of the world. When front yards become front lines, at the crossroads of conflict and epidemic, where there are no hospitals, that's where we operate. Your response is critical to our response in places where few others will go. That's where we operate. Learn more at doctorswithoutborders.org.
Hey, y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here.
Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
30 years ago, the Berlin Wall comes down. Germany unified for the first time since World War II. But the cost of integrating the former Soviet satellite state doesn't come cheap. Growth picks up, industrial production takes off, and Germany becomes the dominant economy of Europe, and in some sectors, the world. Volkswagen, BMW, Siemens, BASF, to name a few, at the heart of the machine. January 1st, 1999, the euro is born with the European Central Bank headquartered in Frankfurt. Berlin loses its beloved Deutschmark, but Germany becomes the chief beneficiary of the common currency. As German economic might grows, problems are emerging. The euro region debt crisis, an increasingly hostile Russia, the immigration crisis, Dieselgate, Brexit, and of course the U.S.-China trade war, sapping Germany's export dominance. Manufacturing collapses, exports slide, and Germany teeters on the edge of its first recession in more than 6 years. With Merkel in the twilight of her power, Germany Inc. struggling to restore its preeminence, pressure builds on the government to spend its way out of the economic malaise. The question is, even if the fiscal taps are opened, will it be enough to prime the one-time engine of Europe?
That was Bloomberg's Matt Miller reporting from Berlin, as you can see, to take a look at Germany's journey since the fall of the Berlin Wall 30 years ago and to preview what is still to come. Let's welcome now Bloomberg's Birgit Jenen, coming to us from Berlin. So Birgit, welcome. Good to have you here. Give us a sense. It was quite an undertaking to put these two countries, because they were separate countries effectively, together. How much progress have they made in 30 years?
I mean, Germany is one country. I want us to keep this in mind. I mean, we have one language, and that obviously helps integration massively. But one has to say, economically, when you travel through the East now, you see that the country has massively changed. The high unemployment, which we saw just right after the fall of the Berlin Wall, it has come down. The differences in unemployment aren't that high anymore. And you can see that wealth is triggering through to the East. But what has not been achieved is sort of a unified society. East and West, people are still feeling somewhat apart, and particularly with Eastern Germans, they feel somehow left behind. And this comes together with the trend of globalization. You don't get big international companies, which we just mentioned here. They're just not based in East Germany. They're all still based in West Germany. So East Germans are still somehow feeling left behind, and they still feel sort of that the West is somewhat dictating where it's going.
One of the things that we watch carefully with the politics in Germany is the rise of populism. And that has certainly been a challenge, I think it's fair to say, for Chancellor Angela Merkel. Is there a difference in the degree of populism between what was the West and what was the East?
Yeah, I do think there is a difference. I mean, basically the East hasn't had that experience of immigration, obviously, because it was a closed country. So even with just a limited number of refugees entering the East, it is almost too much for them to cope at the moment. It's because combined with this feeling of being left behind, the only bit they're getting from globalization, that's the feeling, is the refugees. And they have the feeling that somehow the refugees get more than what they got after reunification. And this is why certain xenophobia is building up in the East. and yes, is dividing the country.
Quickly, Birgit, finally, it strikes me that Angela Merkel herself is from the East. Has that made a difference?
I mean, it hasn't made a big difference. Angela Merkel has never made a big issue out of being from the East. She was aware that in order to be a successful chancellor, which she has been over the last 14 years, she has to make sure that she's representing the whole of Germany. And she, if she would have made a thing out of being an East German, the West Germans wouldn't have liked that. So she always played that somewhat down. Just now, at the end of her tenure, she's actually making a big, much more of a speech about this. She's coming out more and says that East Germans actually need to have more say in the country.
Okay, thank you so much, Birgit. Really appreciate the reporting from Berlin. That's Bloomberg's Birgit Yenin over in Berlin. Coming up, the Sudafed solution. We study a new plan to keep e-cigarettes away from kids. Balance of Power continues on Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuits look at luxury. An 11-inch bronze sculpture with disputed links to Leonardo da Vinci failed to fetch $50 million at auction, or any dollars. This is life, said the visibly disappointed president of Guernsey's auction house at the Pierre Hotel auction. The sculpture remains unsold, but it doesn't detract from its potential importance. Ferrari is teaming up with Giorgio Armani to tackle a long-held goal of the late chairman Sergio Marchionne, transform the marquee into a fully fledged luxury brand. The marriage between the two Italian powerhouses will give Ferrari a new direction in branded goods, with items such as parkas and sunglasses now carrying premium-style pricing more in line with its $1 million supercars. You may hate the day you heard it, but the Korean family behind Baby Shark are now multi-millionaires thanks to the infectious tune. Do has amassed more than 3.8 billion views on YouTube and a fortune for the owners of children's educational brand Pinkfong and Samsung Publishing. I'm Andrew O'Day, Bloomberg Radio.
You don't usually find the titans of finance, business, and politics sitting around together.
There's been this transfer of royal power and royal prerogative.
But amazingly, they're nearly all here every weekday.
Let's talk about their data. What are you looking for?
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow.
So where does the circuit breaker come from?
Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern.
He's got to respond, doesn't he?
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Tom has been a teacher for over 40 years. One day, I think one of the students had asked the question and he didn't remember the answer. And I also noticed that he was letting his class out earlier than they were supposed to let out. I was really starting to worry.
Levi and I talked about how it would change our lives, but he was there beside me.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pelota. Mixed Friday here. Equities drifting after President Trump said the U.S. has not agreed to a tariff rollback with China, dimming hopes for a preliminary trade deal next month. The S&P 500 index little changed after yesterday's record. It is on track for a 5th weekly gain, sparked by optimism. Global growth has bottomed, and a partial trade pact is within reach. Right now, we've got the S&P up 1 point at 3,086. Little change change there. The Dow is down 33, a decline of 0.1, and NASDAQ up 18. That is an advance of 0.2%. 10-year yield 1.91% right now. Gold down 0.4%, lower by $6.48 the ounce at $14.61. West Texas Intermediate crude holding on to gains, little changed, up 2 cents now, $57.16 a barrel. Gap shares slumping 6.9%. Wall Street questions whether the planned spin-off of Old Navy will proceed after the company announced that CEO Art Peck will be stepping down. It also issued disappointing preliminary third-quarter results. It is 1:02 on Wall Street. Time now for the Market Drivers Report with a focus on American depository receipts. And here is Dave Wilson.
Thanks, Charlie. ADRs are lower, unlike U.S. shares. The S&P ADR index is down about 0.25%. And the S&P 500 is little changed. Swiss luxury goods maker Richemont has lost 5.8% in U.S. trading. The owner of Cartier and Van Cleef & Arpels reported a fiscal first-half operating profit that was lower than analysts' average estimate in a Bloomberg survey. Richemont's sales were hurt by protests in Hong Kong. Argentine energy company Pampa Energías dropped almost 10%. And natural gas pipeline owner TGS has fallen 9%. Both companies will be removed this month from MSCI's benchmark stock indexes, including its emerging market index. Denmark's Vestas Wind Systems has risen 3.5%. The maker of wind turbines posted third-quarter earnings before interest, taxes, and one-time items that surpassed estimates. Vestas' sales also beat projections. And Israel's Teva Pharmaceuticals advanced 7.8%. The maker of generic drugs plans to sell $1.5 billion in bonds to refinance 3 debt issues coming due in 2021. Teva is set to meet with potential buyers on Monday, Charlie.
And we thank you very much, Dave Wilson, following those American depository receipts. Recapping, stocks trading mixed with NASDAQ higher by 17, S&P up by a point, little change there. The Dow declining by 33 points. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
This is Balance of Power.
We have the strongest economy by far in the world.
We're going to grow our trade relationship.
I know what's broken. I know how to fix it.
Where the world of politics meets the world of business.
They've got the money they need to run a very competitive race.
We've got now a real crunch few days for Brexit.
We want certainty in the markets. We want certainty in our trading relationships.
The administration is trying to create a new divided world.
Balance of Power with David Weston on Bloomberg Radio.
President Trump says not so fast on rolling back tariffs. Prime Minister Boris Johnson struggles to get his campaign going, and Republicans reach out to African Americans looking for votes in 2020. From the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio, welcome to the second hour of Balance of Power. President Trump has not always appealed to African American voters, with a recent poll showing that over 90% disapprove of the way he's handled race relations. But Mr. Trump appears to be readying a new initiative to change that. We welcome now Mario Parker, who covers the White House for Bloomberg. So, Mario, you've got a great piece out on the Bloomberg today about President Trump's plans to try to appeal to African Americans. How's he going to do it?
Sure. Well, his plan is to utilize the relatively strong economy that we have in the U.S. right now. Record low. He's fond of citing record low unemployment numbers for minorities, particularly African Americans, and he's kind of used that as a shield to beat back against some of the critics that the critiques he's kind of taken over some of his divisive rhetoric around race.
Yeah, it strikes me that on the merits, as it were, he's got some claims, right? I mean, as you say, unemployment, the economy, for that matter, prison reform, but sometimes his words might get in his way.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, that's the conundrum. His words may be his biggest enemy in terms of really highlighting what his agenda toward minority or African American communities. As you alluded to, he put forth the First Step Act that looked at reducing prison sentences. He's expanded funding for historically black colleges, and then again the record low unemployment. The problem is the rhetoric, the warring with or the sparring with the squad per se, or some of his comments about predominantly African countries. Those do him no favors.
It's also interesting as you watch the rallies and things like that. I don't remember him making a big deal, for example, about the prison reform. Maybe he has, and I wasn't watching. But is he really featuring that? Is he marketing it, as it were? Because I know that reform prison is a really important issue for the country overall, but particularly in the African American community.
No, you make a really good point, and it's something, quite frankly, some of his Democratic contenders on the other side may have a weak spot. For instance, I'm thinking about Joe Biden with the criticism he's received over the crime bill, but he hasn't. The president hasn't. I was at a rally this past week, and he did not mention the First Step Act. He did mention the strong economy and the low figures for unemployment in the black community. But that message about the First Step Act has seemed to be in smaller audiences and not in the broad rallies that we see televised often.
Now, in your piece that you wrote with Josh Wingrove, you refer to a new group that apparently they're putting together called Black Voices for Trump. Do we have a sense of who's likely to be in that group? Who's he recruiting?
Sure, absolutely. They're launching it in Atlanta today, and the campaign tells us that he enjoys relatively stronger support in that city, which is a relatively affluent African-American city, one of the most affluent, actually. And the folks that are set to be there will be folks that are already on board with the president's message, already supporters, etc. And then the idea is that they're going to expand that. They're going to be deployed into communities to get this message out about the First Step Act, to get this message out about the economy, to get this message out about opportunity zones and tax credits and what he's done for that community.
Give us a sense of what the goal is here. I mean, traditionally, for many, many years, Democrats have done better with the African American community than Republicans. Is he trying to win it? Is he trying to get a majority of the African American voters?
I don't think that's possible. Again, given some of the rhetoric around there, given some of the legacy there, going back some 50 years or so. But a victory for the president would be to increase some of those numbers, or vis-a-vis not lose by as broad a margin, and or quell some of the enthusiasm that African American voters may have to run to the polls for an alternative to him. Right. So in a key swing state, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Florida, even that has large populations of African Americans. If he could decrease the margin or the deficit there, then that could in turn be a victory as well.
So it's not just African Americans that President Trump's going after, but also, as I understand it, there's sort of a coveted group of white Catholics on the Democratic side that people think is really important if somebody's going to have a serious challenge to President Trump. Who's in the best place on the Democrat side for white Catholics?
Sure. What's interesting, what we're seeing playing out is that President Trump is making appeals to a part of the Democratic base, and on the other side, you have one of the front runners, former Vice President Joe Biden, making appeals to the religious constituency, which overwhelmingly favored President Trump in the last election. Former Vice President Biden is a Catholic, and so he's peppered his speeches, particularly in Iowa, in religious towns in Iowa, such as Dubuque. He's peppered a lot of his rhetoric and couched a lot of his rhetoric in around religious metaphors. He's quoting Kierkegaard about faith being working best in the dark. He's using language such as the fight for the soul of America. When he says something, he's declaring it the honest to God truth. And so he's peppered his speech with some of these whistles toward Catholics, if you will.
Does religion play much of a role anymore at all in the race?
It does. President Trump this morning on the White House lawn mentioned evangelicals, for example, and he's regularly had preachers come into or pastors come into the White House. He's spoken about, putting anti-abortion judges on the bench, and he mentioned this morning that evangelical pastors have told him they've never felt such energy. And so he's been speaking to that constituency. So religion, I would say, is still a big factor in the elections.
And finally, to close this back out on the African-American vote, does President Trump have any members of his cabinet or senior officials that he can point to? I mean, I guess I'm thinking of Herman Cain, but there may be others as well, as he tries to court that group.
Sure. He's got Ben Carson that runs HUD there. And then for our story today, we spoke with Jerron Smith, who is one of the highest-ranking African-Americans in the administration. Right. And he's also been a part of the team that's done a lot of this work in terms of liaising between the administration and the African-American community.
Okay, Mario, thank you so much. That's Mario Parker reporting for Bloomberg. The vaping craze is sweeping the country, especially among teenagers. But Bloomberg Opinion's Joe Nacero thinks he may have found a solution. We're going to talk with him next. That's on Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio.
In a perfect world, you'd be listening at exactly the same moment the most important things are said.
Negotiations over a trade deal are advancing.
Instead, we designed the perfect show.
They discussed risks and the transition to renewable energy.
June Grasso and Ed Baxter.
The conversation continues with a focus on trade.
Bloomberg Best, weekday evenings at 5 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Okay, kids, Dad's gonna teach you how to dance. First, spread your feet apart. Then, pump your knee, nod your head, shake your hips, and bite your lip ever so slightly. Now, with one hand in the air, point at people with the other hand. I call that the rock star.
Dance like a dad. It's a great way to make a moment with your kids.
Now, make a face like it just smells something bad.
Visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
The average time a resume spends on an HR manager's desk is 7 seconds, and most of them are tossed aside. Now imagine if one of those resumes belonged to Yasmin, who was
living in a shelter, juggling 3 jobs. I had to be resilient. That's something that you can't teach.
We rely so much on a resume, yet it could never tell the full story of someone who
had to be independent and take initiative, and that's how I handle every project I get.
Discover new ways to develop great talent at gradsoflife.org. Brought to you by Grads of Life and the Ad Council.
What if you could keep the
Teaching shapes lives. Becoming a teacher means a career of opportunities. You could head a subject department or work towards school leadership. And with a minimum starting salary of £24,000 to £30,000, teaching has never been so rewarding. Teaching. Every lesson shapes a life. Search Get Into Teaching. Starting salary dependent on location.
Whether you're waiting for a train or a takeaway, with Tesco Mobile you don't have to wait for a brilliant deal. Our best ever Black Friday event is on. This week you can get a Samsung Galaxy A50 for just $17.49 a month. That's our lowest ever price. Get yours by the 10th of November. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Best ever Black Friday based on range of products in promotion was £18.99, now £17.49. 36-month credit agreement, rolling monthly usage agreement, subject to status, various policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Introducing a new podcast, ESPN Daily. When you want to go beyond your feed, when you want to get inside the score, when you want to get behind the highlight, there's ESPN Daily. Go deeper into the stories of the moment. Get the exclusive access and insider perspective that only ESPN can give you. ESPN Daily, hosted by me, Mina Kimes. Listen and favorite ESPN Daily on TuneIn.
NFL fans, the action continues this weekend on TuneIn Premium.
Hand off the Gord, pushes forward, touchdown!
This Sunday, TuneIn has every NFL football game starting with the New York Giants at the New York Jets at 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern and closing out Sunday night with the Vikings at the Dallas Cowboys at 8:20 p.m. Eastern.
Breaks inside the 25-20, inside the 15, the 10, the 5, touchdown!
At home or on the go, hear the home and away call of every NFL game this season on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Good. Here's a swing and a drive deep to right field. Looking up. Goodbye, baseball.
Between game-winning shots and walk-off homers, follow TuneIn on social media to discover the latest and greatest in live sports.
With the 24th pick in the 2019 NFL Draft.
From live reminders that the biggest MLB games are on the air to recommendations of the best new sports talk shows and podcasts.
He's going to be fine. He's going to be good right away in 3 years.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Cutting for the net. Scores! On the goal line, Marchand scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
You can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
What if you could keep up with cable news even when you're on the go? With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to MSNBC live without any commercial interruptions. All of the news, none of the ads. Listen live on TuneIn Premium today.
Breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. It is a mixed Friday here with the S&P little change to holding on to records, though, up by 1 point. The Dow lower by 30 off its session lows, down 0.1%. NASDAQ pushing higher, up by 15, a gain there of 0.2%. S&P 500 index is on track for its fifth weekly gain. The 10-year down 2/32 with a yield of 1.92% this Friday. Gold down 0.5%, $14.61 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude little changed, up 2 cents right now, $57.16 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Bloomberg Opinion, informed perspectives, and expert data-driven commentary on breaking news.
It's time now for Bloomberg Opinion, and we welcome columnist Joe Nocero. So Joe has a terrific column out. I really commend it to everybody today about what could be done practically on the vaping problem. But it's not just Joe that's talking about it. The President of the United States also today talked about what he thinks should be done.
We have to take care of our kids, most importantly. So we're going to have an age limit of 21 or so. But we'll be coming out with something next week very important on vaping.
So, Joe, as I say, you have what I think is a terrific column on the subject. A different solution, not increase the age to 21, a different way of approaching it. What is it?
Well, first of all, it doesn't come from me. It comes from David Kessler, the former head of the FDA, one of the big opponents of tobacco in the 1990s. He basically said, look, you do it like you do Sudafed. It's not requires a prescription, but you put them in pharmacies, and you go to the shelf in a pharmacy, and you pick out a card that says Juul or whatever other brand that you want. You take it to the pharmacist, and you buy the vaping tool and products, and it would instantly solve the kid problem, because pharmacists are a lot more careful about who gets products than your local grocery store clerk or your liquor store clerk. And so in that narrow sense, I think it would absolutely solve the immediate kid problem.
And one of the things that's driving him is the rate of addiction right now from kids. I mean, one of the things he said to you is you cannot have the next generation become addicted before your eyes, no matter how much you want to help the adult smoker.
That's right.
And that's part of the irony here, is because initially, I guess, people thought this is a good thing for public health overall, because you get people to stop smoking, adults, and move over to vaping. Right. And that's not the main effect.
Right. Well, first of all, it does. Adult smokers should switch to vaping, because it is a lot safer. There's no question about that. But nobody expected this epidemic of youth vaping, and that has surprised everybody, and it's caused everybody to say the most important thing to do is to get kids to stop vaping, and then we'll worry about the adult smoker. So what Kessler's saying is, here's a way to deal with the kid issue. And then let's figure out what to do for the adult smoker.
And if we needed to focus on this, in your piece, once again, you have this number, which I think is just stunning, that for every adult smoker who switches to e-cigarettes, there are 81 teenagers who take up vaping.
Right, and that is the problem in a nutshell. You really want to. There's 44 million American smokers. It would be really great to get them off smoking, but you can't have a generation of addicted teens.
So the Sudafed thing came about because I guess Sudafed is a precursor. You can use it somehow to get to methamphetamines.
That's right.
Was that successful? Because I know
I
have to go in and sign in, go behind the counter, all that stuff.
I don't know if you were a regular watching Breaking Bad. But the reason I say this. In season 1 of Breaking Bad, they would go to the drugstore and get Sudafed.
Yeah. Exactly.
And take the ingredient. And then in season 2, they weren't able to do that anymore because the federal government said you have to put it behind the pharmacy counter. So it's actually worked very well. If you go into a drugstore, you see a Sudafed, you just see it in a piece of cardboard on the shelf. You just pick up the piece of cardboard that says Sudafed on it, you hand it to the pharmacist, you buy the product. It works.
Do you know where that came from in this sense? I know that people thought it through and that was the good solution, but is that a federal regulation?
Yes.
So how is that policed? How is that enforced?
It's an FDA regulation.
That applies to all Sudafed sales.
That's correct. And any sale, I can't pronounce the name of the active ingredient of Sudafed.
I certainly can't.
But there's a whole bunch of products that use the same thing, and they all are treated the same way.
Now, you've had some reaction.
Have I ever?
Not everyone agrees with you.
Right.
What have you heard?
Basically, most of the people who are pro-vaping, who believe it's really helping them as a former smoker or other adult smokers, are really objected, saying that I would put, if this came into effect, every vaping store in the country would go out of business. And there's a lot of them. There's thousands of vaping stores. And so that got me thinking, well, okay, let's have licensed vaping stores. Mm-hmm. Instead, and I mean, the idea is you really need to get it out of liquor stores. You need to get it out of drugstores. You need to get it out of big box stores. You need to have it a place where it's contained and where the person who's looking at the ID feels a strong sense of responsibility to make sure it doesn't get into the hands of the kids. And let me say this, moving the age to 21, they should do that anyway. Even if, whether you do this or not.
So the president's right about that.
100%, and I don't say that lightly when it comes to that. It's nice to be an opinion columnist.
It's also the case that not all drugstores at this point are willing to sell vaping products. I interviewed the CEO of CVS Health yesterday, and they don't sell vaping products.
That's right, and because they don't want to be in this position of being part of the problem. But if you did it the Kessler way, they would probably be part of the solution.
Now, the FDA is taking a look at vaping, particularly when it applies to teenagers. And I guess what they're really looking at is the flavors, right?
Well, first of all, it seems inevitable that most flavors are going to be outlawed. That seems almost a given. The real thing that's going on is by May 2020, every company that sells a vaping product will have to apply to the FDA for continued permission to sell that product. And part of the parameters is they have to prove that it's beneficial for public health. And that's going to be their big problem. How are they going to prove that with the vaping epidemic? As long as there's a teen vaping epidemic, they're not going to get approval.
But under that analysis, if they could show that we've got the teens out, they might have a chance because you're saying it's better to vape than it is to smoke a cigarette, adults.
That's right. That's right. So that's what you're going to see happen. You're going to see the vaping companies absolutely adamant about finding a way to solve the teen vaping problem, because if they don't, their products will not exist much past 2020.
Well, as I say, it's a fascinating piece, and Dr. Kessler really, I think, has made a contribution to the discussion. And you get credit because you went and found him. You heard about it. It was off the record. You went and found him.
Right. Thank you very much. But I just want to say about Dr. Kessler, one of the things that's great about him is he's not in either camp. He's a practical guy trying to find a practical solution. We need more of that.
Thank you so much. That's Bloomberg Opinion's Joe Nocera. You can read more on this and other stories from Bloomberg Opinion at Bloomberg.com/opinion and on the terminal by typing in OPIN GO. Whatever the merits or outcome of the impeachment inquiry, it's a field day for Washington lawyers. We talk with law professor William Banks of Syracuse University about the growing list of legal and constitutional issues. That's coming up next on Balance of Power, and we are on Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Stocks have turned mixed, clawing their way back from earlier lows. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is down 33, the S&P 500 fractionally higher. The Nasdaq Composite is up 16. Americans are waiting longer to buy a home. The National Association of Realtors says the median age of first-time home buyers is now 33, the oldest in records dating to 1981. Higher prices and student debt are blamed for sidelining younger buyers. Gap is down nearly 7%. The retailer last night fired CEO Art Peck after his turnaround efforts failed to reignite sales. Robert Fisher, son of the chain's co-founders, will step in temporarily. Oil is little changed, gaining a few pennies. Traders remain nervous as they await more concrete signs that the U.S. and China are resolving their trade dispute. The market is also worried that OPEC and its partners won't cut production further to prevent a glut. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
Sweet strawberry icing. You're in Goodwill, and just past that vintage denim jacket you spot miniature donut earrings. You lean. That's the scent of shopping success. Because at Goodwill, every item you buy funds local job training and more. So bring home those donut earrings and bring home so much good to your community. Goodwill. Bring good home. Brought to you by Goodwill and the Ad Council.
Join us in New York City on November 21st as Bloomberg Pursuits convenes the second annual The Year Ahead Luxury. Speakers include Jennifer Hyman, CEO Rent the Runway, Alessandro Bogliolo, CEO Tiffany & Company, Robert A.M. Stern, renowned architect. Supporting sponsor, Diamond Producers Association. Participating sponsor, St. Regis Hotels and Resorts. For more information, go to BloombergLive.com/TYA Luxury. Invitation code RADIO.
In-depth analysis.
This winter, why not take the short flight from London to Dublin with Aer Lingus from just $32.99 each way as part of a return trip? From coastal walks to cozy pubs and friendly locals, you'll find so much to enjoy once you're there. Smart takes a Dublin city break. Smart flies Aer Lingus. Book now at aerlingus.com. Terms and conditions apply.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and be unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Introducing a new podcast, ESPN Daily. When you want to go beyond your feed, when you want to get inside the score, when you want to get behind the highlight, there's ESPN Daily. Go deeper into the stories of the moment. Get the exclusive access and insider perspective that only ESPN can give you. ESPN Daily, hosted by me, Mina Kimes. Listen now to ESPN Daily on TuneIn.
Along the goal line, scores! It takes it home!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
Here's Pietrangelo, he scores!
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium.
Gonna move, hit a shot, they score!
From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
Hi, this is Brian Weber, host of NFL First and Goal, every Sunday, kicking off at 1 Eastern, only on TuneIn Premium. Be sure to listen this Sunday for the ultimate football fan experience, featuring 7 hours of commercial-free coverage of every scoring play around the NFL.
You're listening to TuneIn, where you can hear all the audio you love in one place. Live NFL games, the hottest music, breaking news, and podcasts. Push play and go about your day, only on TuneIn. Some days life can get in the way of catching up on the news that moves your world. TuneIn is here to help. With live 24/7 coverage from CNN wherever you go on the TuneIn app, you can always find a slice of your schedule, however long, to check in on the biggest stories of the day.
Hell hath no fury. The president's counselor went on a rampage on a taped phone call with Washington Examiner reporter.
Search CNN on TuneIn to get the live news when it matters most.
Far wing, elevates, triple bucket.
The war of the crowd. The shot clock ticks down. Will the ball go in?
The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. And the replays just don't cut it.
The sideline, the man bleeds for three.
TuneIn Premium brings you every minute of the NBA season streaming live, so you can be there when it matters most. Hear it now, hear it live on TuneIn.
Fake in the lane, turnaround jumper from 8 feet is good on the
Search
right.
NBA Today to start listening.
Broker Studio in New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Balance of Power with David Weston.
Coming up on Balance of Power, the whistleblower's lawyer has written a cease and desist letter to President Trump. We talk about the legal implications of this and a host of other claims being raised with my colleague June Grasso. But first, let's get a market check with Charlie Pellet.
Hi, thank you very much, David Weston. Happy Friday, by the way. We are looking at an unchanged S&P 500 index as I speak. On track, though, for another winning week, 5 in a row. Here's where we stand. S&P flat on the day. We've got the Dow down 39, a drop there of 0.1%. NASDAQ is up 14 points now, a gain of 0.2%. So equities drifting after President Trump said the U.S. has not agreed to a tariff rollback with China, dimming hopes for a preliminary trade deal next month. 10 years down 2/32, yield 1.92%. Gold down 0.4%, 14.62 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude down 0.2%, 57.05 a barrel. The University of Michigan's nationwide consumer sentiment index improved for the third month in a row. And with that story, here's Bloomberg's Vinny Del Giudice.
The longest streak of gains in 2 years suggests low unemployment, record stock prices, and Federal Reserve rate cuts are just what the doctor ordered. At 95.7, this month's consumer sentiment index is the highest since July. 55% of consumers surveyed report improving finances, one of the best readings in a half-century of data. Vinny Del Giudice, Bloomberg Radio.
The U.S. oil rig count down by 7 to 684. Weekly numbers from Baker Hughes after earnings. The Walt Disney Company advancing by 3.1%. Crude, by the way, down 0.1%, 57.08 a barrel. Gold down 0.4%, 14.62 the ounce. Recapping, stocks mixed. The Dow, S&P lower, little changed on the S&P now. NASDAQ up by 0.2%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Balance of Power, the Friday edition continues. And once again, here he is, David Weston.
Yeah, and a happy Friday. Back to you, Charlie Pellet. The lawyer for the whistleblower wrote President Trump demanding that he cease and desist from engaging in what he calls, quote, rhetoric and activity that places his client and family in physical danger. Here to take us through the legal significance of this is June Grasso and William Banks. He's Syracuse University professor of law. So, Professor, welcome. It's good to have you with us. Give us a sense of what this cease and desist letter really means. Is it just precatory, or might it have some effect leading to a lawsuit down the road if something bad happens?
I'm afraid it's just precatory. You know, it's a sort of a war of symbols now between the White House and the Whistleblowers Council. The whistleblower absolutely deserves to be protected legally, and I think virtually everybody but the White House knows that. But now they're sort of fighting rhetoric with rhetoric. I doubt the cease and desist order will have any legal effect, but it makes a statement.
So any number of Republicans right now are talking about the whistleblower, and one claim in particular that struck me was from Senator Rand Paul, who says we have a right to know about this, and this is part of what he said.
We also now know the name of the whistleblower. The whistleblower needs to come before Congress as a material witness because he worked for Joe Biden at the same time Hunter Biden was getting money from corrupt oligarchs. I say tonight to the media, do your job and print his name.
So, Professor, if that weren't enough, he actually took to the Senate floor, Rand Paul did, and said there's a Sixth Amendment right on the part of the president to confront the whistleblower. Does that make sense?
No, it makes no sense whatsoever. The Sixth Amendment is a confrontation clause, and it applies in a criminal law enforcement setting, not in a whistleblower context or in a congressional investigation of an executive branch oversight. What's in part most striking about the rhetoric now about the whistleblower is that whatever the whistleblower has said has been corroborated and repeated by a number of other potential witnesses and actual witnesses who are already subject to on-the-record testimony before the House.
Bill, let's turn to the upcoming impeachment hearings. How will these sessions look different from the hearings we're used to, with each side getting 5 minutes and then being cut off?
You know, that's a good question, June, and it remains to be seen. I think they're having to fashion rules pretty quickly here to lay out a path before them. But they're going to bend over backwards to give ample time for the witnesses to say everything that they want to say, and for the Republicans to have an equal amount of time to examine the witnesses. The terms of procedural fairness, everybody will be bending over backwards, as they should.
Democrats have pulled the subpoena for Charles Kupperman, the former top national security official for Trump, because of fears that it would slow down the impeachment process. Are the Democrats sacrificing important evidence, perhaps, for expediency?
Yeah, I think that's a very tough judgment call that they're making. They made the call. Speaker Pelosi and other leadership, Mr. Schiff, the lawyers who are working on all these matters for the House, that they have enough from what can be publicly put before the American people to substantiate the points about the Ukraine business, which, of course, is the main agenda item for an article of impeachment. But they do, I think, run the risk of losing some stuff that they might get eventually if they wait for the courts to act. And, of course, at the same time, the White House is playing the waiting game to its advantage, stonewalling and taking every issue to the courts, just knowing that the normal process would delay it up until Election Day.
Professor Adam Schiff, the chairman of the Intelligence Committee, has said, okay, if you're going to give us a tough time and not show up, we'll just draw an adverse inference. Now, I know that's done sometimes in civil litigation. If somebody doesn't comply, if they're a party to it, is that going to work in an impeachment inquiry?
Well, it would be probably a smaller point in an obstruction of justice article of impeachment. And, that was part of the problem. That was the Clinton impeachment debacle, of course, was to what extent did the president obstruct the impeachment process himself by the false and misleading testimony that he gave in the lead up to it. And I think there could be that, but I think the House wants to make the Ukraine matter the centerpiece of impeachment, because I think it can be explained to the American people what happened and why it's wrong.
All three witnesses that Congressman Schiff has notified us are going to be testifying have already spoken privately with the committee. Does that give an advantage to the Democrats or the Republicans on the committee?
Well, I think, probably the net answer is neither, because everyone now knows, I think, what the gist of the testimony will be for the three. The point of the public hearing is to lay the case out for the American people, and the representatives are going to be influenced, of course, by what their constituents are saying and about how the media is treating the testimony. I doubt that we're going to learn much that we don't already know about the allegations, and it's hard to say what kind of techniques the Republicans will employ to try to undermine the testimony. But I think it's not. This is a public show, and it's an important one, because that's what our democracy is based on, is the participation of the people in the work of their elected representatives. So let it go forward.
Professor, let me bring up one other issue of there could be a problem for proof. In both the Nixon case and the Clinton case, as I recall, everything was domestic. If this were a different sort of proceeding, you'd like to hear from the people on the other end of the phone what they took away from the phone call. It's going to be awfully difficult to get, for example, President Zelensky to show up to testify.
Yes, I think that does make this a little bit different case, but you have so much testimony available about the background from the ambassador, from Sondland, from the former ambassador, to document what kind of discussions were going on and the involvement of the the White House in in demanding the investigation and the role of Giuliani and the rest. So I think it distinguishes this case from those, but I don't think it makes it a more difficult case. It's simply different.
Yeah, the one thing's for sure, we're going to need a lot more advice from people like you. There's no doubt about that. Okay, many thanks to my colleague June Grasso and Professor William Banks of the Syracuse Law School. He specializes up there in constitutional law, fortunately. Now, we all use Wi-Fi every single day, and with the needs growing, we may need more spectrum. We talked with Vijay Nagarajan from Broadcom about the request pending with the Federal Communications Commission that his company has backed. Do we need that spectrum, and what would it take away from? That's next on Balance of Power, and we are on Bloomberg Radio.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's environment of market volatility, Pershing's Prime Services is well positioned to support the needs of hedge funds and other alternative investment managers. Whether it's customized financing or securities lending solutions, platform access, or business expansion, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and agile enough to meet your evolving demands. Pershing helps to solve the needs of clients by advocating for them, providing unwavering strength, deep supply, and award-winning service that is at the core of everything we do. Find out what sets Pershing's prime brokerage team apart.
Learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers offered by BNY Mellon's Pershing. Visit our website at Pershing.com. Pershing LLC, member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
It's another Friday evening. Yet another grey day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick. Reach the top of Mount Teede or relax on a sandy beach. Fly from London Gatwick to Tenerife with British Airways, with flights and 7 nights hotel from just £349 per person. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun. With British Airways, incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
This is the sound of festive fun in London. You want to keep your savings for the things you love this Christmas, not a new boiler. We're with you. So our boilers come with 2 years interest-free credit to keep your savings for a Merry Christmas. You'll get a 5-year British Gas warranty, and now we can quote by video call evenings or weekends. Get a quote by the 30th of November and get £150 off a new boiler, or £450 off for existing home care customers. Search British Gas New Boiler. Conditions apply.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
Hi, this is Brian Weber, host of NFL First and Goal every Sunday, kicking off at 1 Eastern only on TuneIn Premium. Be sure to listen this Sunday for the ultimate football fan experience, featuring 7 hours of commercial-free coverage of every scoring play around the NFL.
Some days life can get in the way of catching up on the news that moves your world. TuneIn is here to help.
With live 24/7 coverage from CNN wherever you go on the TuneIn app, you can always find a slice of your schedule, however long, to check in on the biggest stories of the day.
Hell hath no fury. The president's counselor went on a rampage on a taped phone call with Washington Examiner reporter.
Search CNN on TuneIn to get the live news when it matters most.
College football is live on TuneIn. Listen for free to games from more than 140 schools all season long.
All the way to the checkerboard.
This Saturday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, number 1 LSU is taking on number 2 Alabama with a battle between LSU's quarterback Joe Burrow and Alabama's QB Tua Tagovailoa. Both are potential number 1 picks in the NFL Draft. Listen to every call and every game of your school all season long for free on TuneIn. Just search college to listen today.
Introducing a new podcast, ESPN Daily. When you want to go beyond your feed, when you want to get inside the score, when you want to get behind the highlight, there's ESPN Daily. Go deeper into the stories of the moment. Get the exclusive access and insider perspective that only ESPN can give you. ESPN Daily, hosted by me, Mina Kimes. Listen and favorite ESPN Daily on TuneIn.
Ah, finally another commercial, said no one ever. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade now and get over 45 commercial-free music stations.
Get social with TuneIn. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for the latest and greatest audio on the app. Explore exclusive content. Learn about hot new podcasts and get alerted when the big game, well, it's about to begin. Add TuneIn to your feed and be in the know when it matters most.
If you don't already know, TuneIn is the all-in-one audio app where you can listen to live sports, news, music, and all your favorite podcasts. You can find all the episodes of Riddle, the podcast, The Search for James R. Hoffa, which was selected by the TuneIn editors as a binge-worthy podcast. Go inside my 2-decade-long quest for the truth as I track down clues and investigate the deathbed confession of Frank the Irishman Sharon. Go to TuneIn.com or download the app to listen to Riddle, the podcast on TuneIn.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We've got a down day for the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Flat on the S&P right now, unchanged. The NASDAQ up 14. That's a gain of 0.2%. Worth pointing out, though, that the S&P 500 index up year to date, 23.1%. Equities drifting after President Trump said the U.S. has not agreed to a tariff rollback with China, dimming hopes for a preliminary trade deal next month. The S&P 500 index little changed after notching records yesterday. It is on track for a 5th weekly gain. 10-year down 1/32. That yield 1.92%. Gold down 0.3%, 14.63 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude little change, down 1 cent. Recapping, S&P flat now at 3,085. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Balance of power. We'll get that straight. Continues now. Once again, here is David Weston.
We know what you're saying, Charlie. Thank you so much to Charlie Pellet. Live from the Interactive Broker Studio, this is Balance of Power. And as he said, I'm David Weston. Providers of Wi-Fi and other communications providers have asked the FCC for more spectrum in the 6 gigahertz band for things like Wi-Fi and for 5G service. Welcome now Bloomberg's Stephen Cunningham, who covers the FCC and one of the companies behind the spectrum request. He is Vijay Nagarajan. He's Vice President for Mobile Connectivity at Broadcom. So, Stephen, let me start with you. Set the stage here for us. What is this request? How long has it been pending? And what's the likelihood they'll get it?
Thank you, David. Well, where we are now is that the FCC is likely to rule on this in the next few months. People expect a decision probably early in 2020. And it's likely to go the way of the tech giants that want this spectrum opened up for 5G, much to the annoyance of the utilities who say they need it exclusively for their own critical energy emergency needs.
Yeah, I want to come back to the utilities in a minute, but first, Vijay, let's turn to you. Give us a sense of why you need this spectrum.
That sounds good. Thank you, David. So, 6 gigahertz, as far as we're concerned, and as we look at it, is basically a very critical component for the deployment of 5G and for what we call 5G services. in order for me to explain this, I have to step back and describe a little bit on Wi-Fi. So Wi-Fi today for all of us is like air. It's like coffee. I can live without coffee, but not without Wi-Fi. It is ubiquitous today. I have about 25 odd devices in my home that I use Wi-Fi on. Now, even if you step back from there, about 80% of our wireless data needs today are being met by Wi-Fi. And this would only grow as 5G gets deployed. And as it pertains to the macro issues, Wi-Fi is very crucial to our economy. I mean, it drives business, it drives healthcare, education, government services. So there's a lot of economic value that Wi-Fi delivers. But there's insufficient spectrum as we look at deploying next generation goods and services for Americans.
So what happens? Sorry, what happens if you don't get it? What's the consequence?
Well, so the consequence is that there is the amount of data required, or the amount of data that people consume over Wi-Fi would sort of hit a cap. So people would have insufficient Wi-Fi, so to speak. The shortage of spectrum in turn translates to deficiencies in wireless services that we can offer on an ongoing basis. Future 5G services and critical applications that are considered as part of 5G on a go-forward basis would not have as much of a seamless deployment without the unlicensed spectrum being made available for Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi you should view as a complement to the deployed cellular networks of 5G in order for us to get 5G services as consumers and the broader groups.
So, Stephen, let's talk about these utilities who, as I understand, are raising questions, not necessarily saying don't, but saying that it could cause interference, could take away from their critical functions, such as for safety and for maintenance and things like that. Part of what they say is it's unproven and untested to use this for unlicensed purposes in 6 gigahertz. Are they right? And if so, why can't somebody just test it and prove it?
Well, I think their central objection is that the proposal, David, is being rushed through without much thought and care and process. And, they do acknowledge that the risk of interference is very low. But when you consider that facilities are used to spot faults on lines, to help recover, to put the lights back on after hurricanes and weather-related disasters like that, their main argument is that no risks should be taken or nothing should be left to chance.
So Vijay, have you done testing? Can you say, look them in the eye, the utilities, and say that is not a problem? Are you sure?
Yeah, I mean, we've been, as Broadcom, been doing these studies for over 3 years now on the effect of having Wi-Fi in the spectrum as it pertains to incumbents, and we're very confident that Wi-Fi can absolutely coexist.
And so, Stephen, what is the process at this point? I've seen letters submitted to Ajit Pai, the chair of the FCC. What is the process? Is this a notice and rulemaking proceeding? Notice and comment rulemaking proceeding? What is it?
Yeah, so we're expecting a decision in the next few months. I mean, obviously with the FCC, there are clashes all over the spectrum. The FCC is very busy dealing with, it's under mandate from Congress to open up the spectrum. And this is only one particular issue that it's having to deal with at present. We're expecting something in the next couple of months. To date, the chairman of the FCC, Ajit Pai, has made positive noises in terms of conceding and opening it up to 5G. So the utilities, may be the losers here.
Vijay, if in fact you don't get it, or I guess it sounds more plausible that it might just get delayed, is there an alternative for you? Is there someplace else on the spectrum you could go?
Not at this point. We believe that 6 gigahertz is the solution for the future Wi-Fi needs, really. So if you look at it, it's a broad swath of spectrum that's being made available for us to be able to deploy that much more faster Wi-Fi with extremely low latencies. You need to have this broad swath of spectrum to be able to do that, to deploy wider bandwidth Wi-Fi for future 5G services. So this is for us a very critical component of the future ecosystem. And to that extent, we're already developing devices, chips that would support 6 gigahertz band.
Vijay, Stephen just said that he expects a decision within the next few months, I believe is the way he put it. What is your expectation, and when will you see really the service degrade if you don't get the extra spectrum?
So, I mean, I think Stephen's right. We are expecting some kind of a decision in the next 2 to 3 months. We do think that this FCC chairman absolutely gets it. He's very committed to 5G and 5G services. And I think to the extent that Wi-Fi is important for 5G services, I think he does want to open up the mid-band unlicensed spectrum of about 1,200 megahertz for 6 gigahertz band in the next 3 months. I think this would really help us from being a complementary service to whatever cellular deployments exist. Now, in terms of your other question as it pertains to services degrade, I think it would be gradual. It's not a step function. You're not going to have a loss of service instantly, but there are more and more devices that are getting deployed on an ongoing basis. There are more people. You go to stadiums or concerts. There are more people uploading data, downloading data. So as devices and data increase, you're going to hit it at some point in time.
Time's a wasting, I guess you might say. Okay, many thanks to Bloomberg's Stephen Cunningham and to Vijay Nagarajan of Broadcom. In the meantime, we've got Jason Kelly here because he's about to come on with Bloomberg Business Week, and we want to find out what he's going to do.
We're going to be talking a little bit about your old shop, Disney, some blowout earnings, but California two ways, because we're also going to talk about California, what's going on out there, what it means for the rest of the country. It's a little bit of a cautionary tale, as you know, politically, economically, climate change, etc.
Well, wildfires and no electricity. And
exactly.
Okay.
On a happier note, we're going to drink some vodka at the end of the show.
Okay, well, I may stay around for that. Okay, thanks so much to Jason Kelly. It's Bloomberg Business Week coming up. In the meantime, that's Balance of Power for today. I'm David Weston. Have a great weekend.
They like new developments.
It's another Friday evening. Yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick and explore tropical rainforests. Fly from London Gatwick to Costa Rica with British Airways from £218 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun. With British Airways, incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and Be Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
This weekend, Volvo are offering 0% APR finance on a Volvo Select approved used car, which means this weekend, 0% of household chores will be finished. So visit your local Volvo retailer this weekend and drive an approved used car with 0% APR finance back home. A messy home.
Available on used vehicles up to 4 years old. Participating retailers. 50% minimum deposit on minimum finance amount of £7,000. Conditional sale, terms and conditions apply. Finance subject to status. 18 plus. Guarantee may be required. Volvo Car Financial Services.
You're stuck indoors, waiting for a delivery.
But you should be at the match with your mates! Get in!
You want to be home when the kids get back from school.
Hey, guys.
But you've got to work late. Again.
With Ring Video Doorbell, you can do both. Featuring HD video and two-way talk, you can see, hear and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are, all on your phone. Available at ring.com and selected retailers.
Hello, Vitality Health Insurance.
Oh, hi. Is it true if I join Vitality I get de facto 5-star rated cover, can speak to a GP 24/7, get rewarded for staying active with things like Starbucks coffee, get a little sausage dog to live with me, and you could beat my current premium by up to 10%?
Absolutely. Except one of those.
It's the dog, isn't it?
Yeah.
Time to review your health insurance. Just search Vitality Health. Vitality. Positively different. Minimum monthly premiums, terms and conditions apply.
Hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
It's all about looking at the S&P 500.
I think we've really rallied a lot because of the geopolitical risks in the market.
Insight from the reporters and editors who bring you America's most trusted business magazine.
Analysts and observers are thinking, why doesn't Apple do something like Amazon Prime?
Plus, global business, finance, and tech news as it happens.
You're spending too much time at cocktail parties. Stay out of them.
Next stop, Funky Town.
Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
It is definitely Funky Town on
Good
this
Lord.
Friday. Man, what a week. I feel like it's been a month that we've been in the studio.
And here we are back again in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. It's Friday.
It is Friday, November 8th, 2019. Carol Masser along with my co-host Jason Kelly. If it's Friday, it must be New York. Busy week.
Right. Really want to dig in on Disney today. We had earnings. We've got a cover story. Disney Plus
Stock's
coming out
moving.
next week. Stock is moving, so a lot to get to there.
All right, first up, though, let's get to the head of Funky Town, Charlie Pellet.
And here we go, 2 o'clock on a Friday. Regular crowd shuffling in. We've got the Dow, the S&P. They are both trading lower right now. Little change. That's the key takeaway here. But if you look at the S&P 500 index, on track for 5 in a row. Here's where we stand. Flat right now on the S&P 500 index at 3,084. The Dow Jones Industrial Average down 47, a drop there of 0.2%. And NASDAQ higher by 12, a gain there of just about 0.2%. 10-year, what a week. The yield now 1.92%, down 3/32. Gold also trading lower, down by 0.4% right now, $14.62 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude up 7 cents, $57.22 a barrel. Recapping S&P down now by 1 point. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thanks so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly, Carol Masser, live with you in New York City. And Disney, obviously a very important company in California. In California, we were there earlier this week.
You were?
North
and South.
North and South. And as you look across that state, there's a lot to candidly be worried about. It's a cautionary tale in many ways, as I said to David Weston a few minutes ago, because of all of the sort of, I was going to say geopolitical, but it's really political, economic, financial, climate, all of those things, housing, cities, all of it.
I'm just going to say the headline says it all. America's biggest problems, man, they are intensified in California. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about women innovators. Yes, we can actually do it all. We'll talk about a new fund that is specifically set up to support female entrepreneurs. And then sip or sweat. It's Friday.
Right. We got a couple different looks at booze. One is a money story. It's all about White Claw. It's a red hot drink. It's made its founder a multi-billionaire. And then we're going to drink some vodka with Kate Crater.
We better drink some vodka. That's all I'm going to say. All right. Let's, though, set the Bloomberg Business Week agenda. And we've got our team in place to do just that. Joe Weisenthal, markets editor at Bloomberg News, co-host of What'd You Miss, coming up at 4 p.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg Television. Dave Wilson's in the house, stocks editor at Bloomberg News, both in our Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio. You guys look a little wary. Are you?
You're saying wary or weary?
Weary. That's my New Jersey in me. Don't ask me to say draw, because that's how it comes out rather than drawer.
Are you weary?
Kindly saying both of us, but I kind of get the impression you're saying to hide the fact.
Well, what was really funny is
I'm looking like it's been a week.
As I'm starting to introduce you guys, Dave is just kind of like slumped over a little bit, like in his chair.
It's been a week.
It's been a week,
yeah.
So I don't know.
So what's your takeaway from this week?
The question is, why don't you guys look weird?
Actually,
magic of makeup.
Both of us, I think, actually, it is the magic of makeup. But I think both of us, we were talking about, got a really good night's sleep last night.
Yes.
We have not had one in about a week.
It is.
Ariana Huffington is onto something.
Yeah, it's true. It would help if the markets were a little more exciting today, because that always...
It's kind of want.
It's a little bit quiet. I think it's interesting, actually, the buoyancy of this market, because, with that headline out in the White House where Trump was downplaying a little bit the tariff rollback, which has theoretically been part of what's made the market buoyant this week. And it didn't have much of an effect. Even at its worst, I think it knocked us down by about 0.2%. And then those losses were erased. So this is a market that really is continuing to see upward moves. We see upward moves in rates. We're around 1.93 on the 10-year, 3.10 spread. That was inverted, now the steepest all year.
Yeah, even as yields climb up, right?
Yeah, steepest spread this year. So, this is a market that continues to be feeling or looking pretty good.
Dave Wilson.
I got to
tell you. Are you wary or weary?
Oh, I could be, but hey, the weekend's ahead, so, you carry on. And that seems to be sort of what the stock market is doing. And what's interesting about where we are now, look, let's face it, S&P 500 up at all today, it's another record. And then you take a step back and look what's going on with earnings, and you say,
S&P is now up 23% this year. Now, mind you, if you do the 2-year, right, everybody keeps saying it hasn't really moved much, but it's up.
With roughly 90% of the companies in the S&P 500 out with third quarter results, it looks like we're going to get a drop in profit for the period, that the analysts were right this time where they weren't in the first and the second quarters. And on top of that, you look out in terms of what's happened to projections. You now have analysts basically saying, maybe we'll get earnings growth in the S&P 500 this quarter, maybe we won't, because the numbers have come down by roughly 3 percentage points in terms of what they're anticipating for growth. And you look out through next year, and those numbers are falling as well. I suppose the other side of it is that if you look at it sequentially from quarter to quarter, the figures pick up all the way out to the end of next year. So I suppose that's the flip side, and perhaps why the stock market showing the kind of strength it is at this point.
All right, what are you looking at, Master?
I was looking at the quiz. I wanted to see what my the Bloomberg quiz, what my firm and global rank were. Did you do the quiz?
I haven't done the quiz yet.
You haven't done it? It was a pretty easy one this week.
All right. I hate getting set up like that. I am looking at this Gap story. We talked a lot about retail yesterday with the CEO of Macy's and Simon. Gap firing their CEO. Now the Old Navy spinoff hanging in the balance. It's such an interesting look into retail and how difficult it is, especially if you have mismanaged it, candidly, as badly as Gap has, and really fallen behind. I feel like Macy's, at least the story you can get behind to some extent. Gap, there's a much tougher story. Retail, I think, just continues to befuddle in a lot of ways.
Yeah, exactly. I got nothing for you.
All right. Gentlemen.
So, are you going to be playing guitar this weekend?
I'm going to go see Dwight Yoakam at Terminal 5. I'm really excited about that. That's my weekend.
Cool.
My weekend excitement.
Dwight Yoakam is great.
Some of our colleagues are also going, so it should be a
okay.
Contingent.
All right. Well, we'll be looking
Wilson?
at the stalwart.
I'll be tweeting.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Dave Wilson, what are you doing this weekend?
I'm headed for the largest record show in the country.
No kidding. Where's that?
Austin, Texas.
Oh, man. Now you're speaking Joe Weisenthal's language. Music plus Austin.
There you go.
That sounds great.
Yeah. All right. Well, you may find him in your suitcase.
Yes.
All right. Have a great time with that. What are you doing? You're going to London.
I'm going to London.
Because you've been in this city for 48 hours, so you need to keep moving.
It's not
one step ahead of the law.
Got to keep getting on a plane every 24, 48 hours. That's how I'm rolling. What are you doing this weekend?
It's your jam. Lacrosse.
See?
A couple lacrosse tournaments up and down the East Coast, so it'll be good.
All right.
Hanging out with the fam.
So let's all get back here on Monday, okay?
Compare notes.
I won't be here.
Everybody else is
Tuesday for me.
All right. Yeah. We'll beam Carol in from London. Thank you both so much. Joe Weisenthal, markets editor, headed off to co-host What'd You Miss at 4 p.m. Wall Street time. And Dave Wilson, stocks editor, you'll be back with your chart and stock of the day. Let's do the Bloomberg Markets Bite of the Day. It's one number that tells us a lot. Today's number, Carol, is 13.
WeWork said it fired 13 employees accused of violating company policies. It's the first major action since SoftBank took a majority stake in the troubled co-working business. The dismissals affected workers in Canada, Israel, Latin America, and the United States. This is according to an email to staff from Marcelo Clore, who is the WeWork chairman and a SoftBank executive. Clore said the violations were related to, quote, vendor selection and management processes.
Cleaning up.
Always so obscure.
Yeah. Well, I think
there's memos from management.
There's going to be a lot of cleaning up done at WeWork. We're already starting to see some shift in strategy, and Mr. Clore is well known to the world of SoftBank. It'll be interesting to see if he is able to. He says I can
call him Clore.
You can call him whatever you want. You just call him Marcello. M-Dog.
M-Dog. Is it Marcello?
Marcello.
Okay. I don't even think I said that right.
Yeah, there you go.
Man, apparently not enough sleep. Okay.
Yeah, maybe not enough. Never enough. Let's get over to world and national headlines. Bob Moon's here. Hey, Bob.
Jason, President Trump said today his administration will pursue raising the age limit to buy e-cigarettes in its plans to combat youth vaping. He told reporters outside the White House that his administration will release its final plans for restricting e-cigs next week.
We have to take care of our kids, most importantly. So we're going to have an age limit of 21 or so. But we'll be coming out with something next week very important on vaping.
A federal law raising the purchase age would require congressional action. Currently, the minimum age to purchase any tobacco or vaping product is 18 under federal law, but more than a third of U.S. states have already raised their sales age to 21. Federal health officials, meantime, are reporting a breakthrough in their investigation into the cause of vaping illness outbreaks. They've detected a common link. Ann Suchet is with the Centers for Disease Control.
These new findings are significant because for the first time, we have detected a potential toxin of concern, vitamin E acetate, in biologic samples from patients with lung injuries associated with the use of e-cigarette or vaping products.
Vitamin E is safe as a vitamin pill or to use on the skin, but inhaling oily droplets can be harmful. President Trump's re-election campaign is launching a new Black Voices for Trump outreach initiative. It's dedicated to recruiting and activating Black Americans in support of Trump by focusing on ways African Americans have benefited from the Trump economy. Trump has had a consistently dismal approval rating with Black voters. Global News 24 hours a day on air and at TikTok, on Twitter. I'm Bob Moon.
In the real world, there are no rabbits in hats, crystal balls, or cards that turn into money. Instead, you get business information from top-tier analysts and experts.
What should expectations be for this latest round of negotiations?
That's actually better, isn't it?
They're both trying to say they have the upper hand.
Bloomberg Markets with Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz. Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Hey, it's me, your cell phone. We need to talk about something serious. I know you love me, I know you like using me wherever you are, but I feel like this isn't working out when you're driving. I know you may think that it's possible to focus both on me and the road, but I just don't feel the same way. I think we should spend time away from each other when you're driving. It's for the best.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
Welcome back to the Dog Show. Up next, we have Satchmo. Satchmo is a member of the Shelter Pet Group.
That's right, a group known especially for their couch-snuggling, ball-chasing, face-licking, and, of course, companionship. Now, let's see him in action.
Look how he makes eye contact with his person.
That's actually known as the treat stare.
How intuitive, and now he appears to be excitedly turning in circles.
Ah, the happy dance so common with this group.
But really, the best way to know an amazing shelter pet like Satchmo is to meet one.
Visit theshelterpetproject.org today. Adopt.
Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
This Sunday on Sky Sports, it's Liverpool versus Manchester City.
We are watching something special.
Will the Reds extend their lead at the top of the table?
The fairy tale goes on.
Or will Pep's side close the gap?
Premier League at its best.
Get more of the biggest Premier League games on Sky Sports with all 8 channels now just £20 extra a month. Get our limited time offer online. Simply search by Sky Sports. Sky Sports, £20 a month for the new 18-month minimum term contract. Requires Sky TV. Prices may change. Offer ends 10th of November.
This winter, why not take the short flight from London to Dublin with Aer Lingus from just $32.99 each way as part of a return trip. From coastal walks to cosy pubs and friendly locals, you'll find so much to enjoy once you're there. Smart takes a Dublin city break. Smart flies Aer Lingus. Book now at airlingus.com. Terms and conditions apply.
You're stuck indoors, waiting for a delivery.
But you should be at the match. With your mates, get in!
You want to be home when the kids get back from school.
Hey, guys.
But you've got to work late. Again.
With Ring Video Doorbell, you can do both. Featuring HD video and two-way talk, you can see, hear and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are, all on your phone. Available at Ring.com and selected retailers.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
If you don't already know, TuneIn is the all-in-one audio app where you can listen to live sports, news, music, and all your favorite podcasts. You can find all the episodes of Riddle, the podcast, The Search for James R. Hoffa, which was selected by the TuneIn editors as a binge-worthy podcast. Go inside my 2-decade-long quest for the truth as I track down clues and investigate the deathbed confession of Frank the Irishman Sharon. Go to TuneIn.com or download the app to listen to Riddle, the podcast on TuneIn.
Introducing a new podcast, ESPN Daily. When you want to go beyond your feed, when you want to get inside the score, when you want to get behind the highlight, there's ESPN Daily. Go deeper into the stories of the moment. Get the exclusive access and insider perspective that only ESPN can give you. ESPN Daily, hosted by me, Mina Kimes. Listen now to ESPN Daily on TuneIn.
The NBA is on TuneIn Premium.
He shoots it. It's good. It's a 1-point lead. They don't have a timeout.
Each week, TuneIn picks an NBA game you just can't miss.
You're off to Wiggins, straight away on the triple try. Bingo! He knocks it down at the buzzer.
The defending champions, Toronto Raptors, are in LA to take on the red-hot LA Lakers. Tip-off is at 9:30 p.m. Eastern this Sunday. Search NBA on TuneIn to follow your favorite NBA team today.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
College football is live on TuneIn. Listen for free to games from more than 140 schools all season long.
All the way to the checkerboard.
This Saturday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, number 1 LSU is taking on number 2 Alabama with a battle between LSU's quarterback Joe Burrow and Alabama's QB Tua Tagovailoa. Both are potential number 1 picks in the NFL Draft. Listen to every call and every game of your school all season long for free on TuneIn. Just search college to listen today.
Want to know what's happening in right now? The latest headlines are just a tap away with Fox News Talk on TuneIn. When news breaks, get up-to-the-minute coverage on developing stories from around the world. Plus, hear all the Fox shows you watch on your TV. Listen to Fox News Talk around the clock on TuneIn.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Lower, little changed on the S&P 500 index, down a point now, close to a record of 3,084. We've got the Dow down 52 points, down 0.2%. NASDAQ holding on to a 12-point gain, up 0.1%. Equities drifting after President Trump said the U.S. has not agreed to a tariff rollback with China, dimming hopes for a preliminary trade deal next month. The 10-year on 2/32 yield 1.92%. Gold is down 0.4%. $14.62 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude unchanged now, $57.16 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week on this Friday. I'm Carol Masser along with Jason Kelly, and this is Bloomberg Radio.
I always feel like somebody's watching me.
Well, it feels like more and more people are watching Disney programming. Investors certainly very bullish on that stock, especially ahead of the Disney Plus launch next week. We've got the perfect team to talk to us about all things mouse. Chris Palmieri is Los Angeles bureau chief for Bloomberg. He joins us on the phone from that bureau. And Geeta Ranganathan, she is technology and media analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence. She joins us on the phone from BI headquarters, had a phenomenal presentation yesterday as part of the year ahead that really sort of set the stage for so many conversations that we had about this streaming service. So, Chris, I want to start with you. Just remind us what we heard from Disney yesterday, because the enthusiasm seemed pretty intense.
Right. I mean, it's just amazing to watch because the earnings were down about 27% per share. Their core, business of TV networks profits was down. ESPN was down. Subscribers were down 4%. Yet the stock rallies. I mean, it was big earnings jump in the film business and at the theme parks. But moreover, there's just this, it's moved from being a business, trading really on earnings and one based on the hope of all these new streaming services. And they had a lot of news yesterday about that. New partners like Amazon and Samsung and LG, earlier than expected launch for the Disney Plus streaming service in Europe. And so there's just a lot of momentum building for Tuesday's announcement.
Gita, come on in, too. You dug into the results in the quarter. How did you see it? What stood out for you?
Yeah, sure. But, I think it was a pretty solid beat. And as Chris mentioned, film really outperformed. I think we're going to continue to see some of that momentum in this quarter as well with, the launch of Frozen 2 and the Star Wars movie. Parks continues to do really well. One notable thing that they mentioned with the park segment was merchandise was up so strong. But really, I think earnings is going to continue to be the sideshow for the next few quarters. I think similar to a few years ago when the market was kind of hyper-focused on ESPN sub losses, I think over the next few quarters it's going to be the Disney Plus sub gains.
Interesting. And so what is it, Chris, about Disney Plus that people are so excited about? Is it the breadth? Is it the cost? Is it what's in the pipeline? And when I say breadth, I mean the library of assets that they have. What's underneath the optimism here?
All of the above. This is an example of them taking absolutely no chances. They're throwing all of their best movies and TV shows, all of their best brands, all of their new ideas. They've got a show premiering on Tuesday called The Mandalorian. It's the first live-action Star Wars TV series. It looks terrific. Jon Favreau directed and wrote it. So they're putting all of their best brands at an incredibly low price, $7 a month, or in some cases free for Verizon customers. And that's a huge psychological shift for a company like Disney, where it's $150 just to walk into the theme park for a day.
So let me ask you guys, and let me start with you, Gita, first. I mean, stock's up about 3.2% at its highs. It was up 5.5% in the Friday trade. It is up now 25% this year. The gains that we've seen are justified, Gita, in terms of the results we've gotten?
Absolutely. I absolutely think so. And I think there's even more momentum for the stock. I mean, yesterday's results and their commentary on streaming was really encouraging. I think as Chris mentioned, there were a lot of good positive surprises. There was an acceleration that they kind of pointed to with the ESPN Plus service. They seem to have some strategic clarity now on Hulu. And then those international launches kind of coming in quicker than we thought they would.
And so, Chris, what trips them up? What are they most worried about? What's on Bob Iger's mind at this point?
So funny. I went to this investor day they did in April where they outlined, basically how much their big projections, how many subscribers are going to have, but also how much they were spending and how they're not going to make a penny on any of these streaming services for another 4 or 5 years. And I walked out of there thinking this is going to be a disaster. The stock's dead money for 5 years. And, of course, it soars the greatest increase in value ever. And that's why I'm a poor reporter and not a money manager. But so I think there's going to be a lot of disappointments between now and 2024, which is when they're projecting to make break even for Disney Plus.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, Gita, what's your thoughts on that?
So they've, It's really hard to say, but I think as of right now, from a subscriber standpoint, I think they absolutely hit the ground running. They just have so many different levers to pull. The content cost angle is going to be a little bit harder. That said, they do have an amazing library, so it's going to be a little bit of a wait and watch.
And so, Gita, if you're sitting at some of the other big streaming competitors, what is your strategy vis-a-vis Disney? We heard Jonathan Nelson right after your aforementioned excellent presentation essentially say, look, Netflix and Disney have largely won this streaming war already. A, do you agree with that? And B, where does that leave the rest of them?
Actually, I do agree with that. So Netflix really has the first mover advantage. They have the breadth, the depth of content. They have the global appeal. Disney has the same thing. I mean, their brands kind of resonate all across the world. So which means that it's going to be a very, very tough slog for all the other services. I think a lot of them basically fall by the wayside.
All right. Well, it's going to be really interesting to watch. We know both of you guys will be all over it. Gita Raghunathan, thank you so much. Technology and media analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence. And Chris Palmieri, LA bureau chief for Bloomberg, all over Disney.
So Disney shares, as I mentioned, they're up about 3.1% as we speak, and they've had a really bullish year so far. So,
and would highly recommend the cover story in Bloomberg Business Week this week. Devin Leonard was here with us yesterday talking about it. Chris Palmieri, I know, worked on that story as well. It really does sort of take you inside Bob Iger's thinking, the sort of key moments along this decision-making process. I know I've mentioned this. I'm reading his book right now, and I usually sort of like read a little bit of these books and move on. It's phenomenal. I mean, his relationship with Steve Jobs, the key decisions that he's made along the way, fascinating.
Think about those key decisions which have given him access to incredible content that he's been able to leverage across the platforms. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week, and this is Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Stocks remain mostly lower amid mixed signals on the outlook for a U.S.-China trade deal. President Trump said today that the U.S. has not agreed to a rollback of tariffs on Chinese imports. Back in June, Boeing thought it was nearly done fixing the 737 MAX flight control software. But when its pilots tested the fix, the flight simulator nearly crashed. Bloomberg reports the failed simulator test was one factor in the months of delay since. Madison Square Garden is down 0.5% after reporting disappointing third-quarter results. It comes a day after MSG's board approved a plan to spin off its sports businesses, including the New York Knicks and Rangers. As third-quarter earnings season winds down, we find that fewer companies have beat expectations, with more than 400 companies in the S&P 500 now reporting 17% missed forecasts. That's up from 13% a year ago. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
3, 2, 1. Oh no. Which button am I?
When every second counts, you can't wing it.
Guys, a little help up here?
In a home fire, you may have less than 2 minutes to get out. So make a family home fire escape plan. Then practice home fire drills at least twice a year so everyone knows what to do when they hear. Prepare your family at ready.gov/fire drill. Brought to you by FEMA, the Ad Council, and Make Safe Happen.
What if you could keep the top economic experts in a conference room next to your office without having to feed them?
Do we need better optics? Do we need some substance? Do CEOs care about ESG?
We have seen quite a lot of stimulus pumped into the system already.
It's the biggest warning yet about the financial risks of climate change.
Now there are more ways to hear us. Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and at BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slams it down. Catch your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back, deep three is up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Get social with TuneIn. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for the latest and greatest audio on the app. Explore exclusive content. Learn about hot new podcasts and get alerted when the big game, well, it's about to begin. Add TuneIn to your feed and be in the know when it matters most.
In the dictionary, a podcast is this: a digital audio file made available on the internet, typically as a series of which new installments can be received by subscribers automatically. But on TuneIn, a podcast is this.
I'm Rachel Martin with David Green, and this is Up First from NPR News.
And it's defined like this.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show.
From news, sports, to pop culture, comedy, and beyond. Define your own podcast possibilities on TuneIn.
Start hearing more of what you want.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations, live commercial-free news, and every live NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL game. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Introducing a new podcast, ESPN Daily. When you want to go beyond your feed, when you want to get inside the score, when you want to get behind the highlight, there's ESPN Daily. Go deeper into the stories of the moment. Get the exclusive access and insider perspective that only ESPN can give you. ESPN Daily, hosted by me, Mina Kimes. Listen now to ESPN Daily on TuneIn.
This is the TuneIn Newsreel with top news stories from today.
Dawdlers seem to get the best prices for holiday travel sometimes. The Wall Street Journal cites AAA, which found that if you haven't booked your holiday flights, reasonable prices may still be ahead, although this year's tougher because of the grounded 737 MAX jets. Amazon will carry the Disney Plus streaming service on its Amazon Fire TV devices.
Hear breaking news as it happens with live around-the-clock coverage from CNBC on TuneIn.
NFL fans, the action continues this weekend on TuneIn Premium.
Hand off to Gord, pushes forward, touchdown!
This Sunday, TuneIn has every NFL football game starting with the New York Giants at the New York Jets at 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern and closing out Sunday night with the Vikings at the Dallas Cowboys at 8:20 p.m. Eastern.
Breaks inside the 25-20, inside the 15, the 10, the 5, touchdown!
At home or on the go, hear the home and away call of every NFL game this season on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today. College football is live on TuneIn. Listen for free to games from more than 140 schools all season long.
To the 10, all the way to the checkerboard.
This Saturday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, number 1 LSU is taking on number 2 Alabama with a battle between LSU's quarterback Joe Burrow and Alabama's QB Tua Tagovailoa. Both are potential number 1 picks in the NFL draft. Listen to every call and every game of your school all season long for free on TuneIn. Just search college to listen today.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York, Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960 to the country, Sirius XM Channel 119, and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Yes, indeed, everybody. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. I'm Carol Massar, along with my co-host Jason Kelly. And one of the big stories, man, there was so much going on, but WOA, the week, included news of Xerox making an offer for HPQ, the old HP.
Yeah, didn't see this one coming at all. There was a lot of buzz about it, including a conversation you had yesterday. We're going to have a conversation coming up with the president of IDC. That's just around the corner. First, Charlie Pellet has an update on the trade. Hey, Charlie.
And here's what's going on. Stocks trading mixed, but shares of Xerox, they're up 4.8% right now. HPQ down 0.7%. The Dow, the S&P, they're both lower. NASDAQ pushing higher. S&P, by the way, little change on track, though, for a winning week. Equities really drifting after President Trump said the U.S. has not agreed to a tariff rollback with China, dimming hopes for a preliminary trade deal next month. Sarah Hunt is portfolio manager at Alpinewood Capital Investors, and on Bloomberg Television today, she said investors just want resolution.
I think that the timing right now is more important to get something done because you're running into an election year where this summer you weren't. So I think that certainly the market is pricing in the fact that we are on our way to solving this problem. And once it gets solved, then you can start talking about other things and you can start looking at other things. But I think just getting this away and getting this gone is a really important aspect.
After earnings, the Walt Disney Company moving higher, up by 3.1%, and Americans are giving a thumbs up on the economy, at least by one measure. University of Michigan Consumer Sentiment Index advancing for the third month in a row in early November as confidence in the economic outlook improves. Gap shares moving lower as Wall Street questions whether the planned spinoff of Old Navy will proceed after the company announces CEO Art Peck will be stepping down. Gap shares down now by 6.2%. West Texas Intermediate crude up 0.3%, 57.29 a barrel. Gold down 0.5%, 14.61 the ounce. The 10-year down 2/32 yield now 1.92%. Recapping, S&P 500 index lower little change, down by a point. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thanks so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week right here on Bloomberg Radio.
A little grace for you on this Friday, taking you back. Flashback Friday, if you will. Speaking of flashbacks, HP, man, it has certainly changed over the last few years. Of course, broken up. That was just a few years ago. What's interesting this week is Xerox. It's official, making a takeover bid for HP, and the board of HP is apparently still deliberating over a $33 billion takeover proposal from Xerox, according to those in the know. Crawford Del Pret's with us, president at IDC Research, and he joins us on the phone from Framingham, Massachusetts. Hey, Crawford, good to have you back with us.
Hey, Carol.
I caught up actually with Meg Whitman yesterday, and we were talking a little bit about this. This was at an event. And, you know, it's interesting to see the changes in big tech and what's going on. But she seemed to indicate that, you know, you're going to see these companies who are kind of aligning themselves to those that are in similar businesses because it essentially kind of makes them a stronger player. But I'm curious how you see this.
Yeah, so thanks for having me. You know, when you look at this sector, right? I mean, the printer segment is just fascinating because, you know, in the server segment and in the PC segment, all the sort of, you know, second platform hardware business, we've seen massive consolidation. And in the printer segment, it's different, right? You'll have probably 10 players or so that will be consolidated eventually. But when you have a PC, you kind of use that PC, use it for 3, 4, 5 years, and then you go on to the next one. But with a printer, you're buying into this ink revenue stream, and you're buying into this legacy of backward compatibility to that ink. So the businesses are a lot more complicated to put together because you have to think about the supply chain. You have to put a value on those customers, and then, you know, that value of that ink, you know, you can't sort of consolidate it and make them use your ink because their ink chemically is different and the packaging of that ink is different. So everything is kind of different. So this industry has been slower to consolidate, and the consolidation that we tend to see in printers is exactly this, where you see someone with, say, a high-end set of products for the office or the managed print services or the production print coming in and merging with somebody in the mainstream office segment. So it becomes very, very complementary. And I think that, you know, from on that logic alone, there's a lot of logic because that would mean that HP would get a lot more exposure to markets that they don't necessarily have exposure to today. And Xerox would be able to bring a lot of their services capabilities into Hewlett-Packard's customers.
All right. So, Crawford, you know this industry very well. Do you like this deal? I mean, is this something that makes sense to you in the context of everything else that's going on? Because I got to tell you, there are a lot of people, younger than I am at least, who are like, Xerox is still around? Like, what? What are these companies? Like, I don't even understand what's happening here.
Yeah. Who are they? Are we talking about Wang? You know?
Yeah, exactly. This is a clapback, as my kids would say. So does it make sense to you?
Yeah, so there is a really so financially, this is a complicated deal. The only way I could see it would be for Xerox to raise a very, very large amount of debt,
right,
which would mean that they'd have to take a lot of cost out of both sides of the company, something Xerox has already been kind of down that path. They'd have to try to increase EBITDA in order to pay that debt down as fast as possible. These do tend to be cash flow rich businesses, but it would be a stretch. This would be a pretty big stretch, and I would say this is probably a deal that with a lower than 50% probability I would think of going through this way because of that structure of the deal. Now, having said that, there is a logic to this deal, and also. At first pass, this deal looks like, you know, two sort of legacy tech companies getting together. But there's something happening in the office. There's this whole idea of the future of work,
right,
how companies want to buy equipment, how they want to they want to bring millennials into the office environment. And millennials want to work in an entirely different way. And that means equipping them with new kinds of tools. Those tools need to be secure. And HP has a lot of security assets they could bring to Xerox products. HP also has a mode, which Xerox is already licensing, which is called Device as a Service, which is the idea that I subscribe to hardware. So I subscribe to PCs, I subscribe to phones. HP actually makes the iPhone available that way, and I can subscribe to high-end print products. So there's some assets that HP has that Xerox could avail themselves to, and they could generate subscription models for this business going forward in a business that they haven't been able to do that in the past. But I'd say, in a lot of ways, it's kind of an inside-out deal where I would have thought, just standing back, that HP would have been the acquirer of Xerox.
Right. Well, that's exactly. Crawford Del Pret, always good to get your insight on things. President of IDC on the phone from Framingham, Massachusetts. What's interesting, Xerox shares are up about 17% this week. HPQ, it's up about 8%, and it's been down the last 2 days. Xerox is up again today, so it's interesting to see the trade as well. So investors, seemingly liking it, I think, from both ends.
You know what Crawford's Twitter handle is? @Craw.
That's great.
So cool.
Man, I can't do that.
I know.
You can't do that.
I know. @Care. At Jace. Not going to work. Maybe @Bob. Bob Moon has world and national headlines. Hey, Bob, what's up?
House Democrats today released new transcripts of testimony from Trump administration officials heading into next week's public hearings. Speaking to reporters outside the White House, President Trump was clearly not happy the process is going public.
They shouldn't be having public hearings. This is a hoax. This is just like the Russian witch hunt. This is just a continuation. When you look at the lawyer for the whistleblower, I thought it ended when they found out that the lawyer was so compromised. I mean, the lawyer's the bad guy. So you look at that, I thought that was the end of it. No, this is just a continuation of the hoax. It's a disgraceful thing.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky convened the Kiev International Economic Forum today in hopes of attracting more foreign investment to his developing nation. As Bloomberg's Herb Chapman reports from Washington, there hasn't been much help from the Trump administration.
President Trump has not only created chaos for Zelensky's government, but there's been an economic impact as well, analyst Michael Bersirku said in a Bloomberg phone interview from Kiev.
They're trying to promote Ukraine as a new investment destination, and Trump and his circle open their mouths about Ukraine. They describe it as a cesspool of corruption. So it's very, very difficult to overcome that day-to-day barrage.
Progress is being made against the crooked oligarchs, Bersirku said, adding that there's also anxiety about long-time U.S. support for Ukraine against the Russians slipping away. In Washington, Herb Chapman, Bloomberg Radio.
The federal government announced $800 million in aid to farmers in 3 southern states that were devastated by last year's hurricanes. Nearly half the money will go to Florida. Global News, 24 hours a day, on air, and at TikTok on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Bob Moon.
So if you're in New York...
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing. You. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power Award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Startups and research universities like New Jersey Institute of Technology are fueling the innovation economy. And few people are better positioned to see what's on the horizon in New Jersey than physicist and state representative Andrew Zwicker.
How technology is transforming our financial sector is revolutionary, and so much of that is in New Jersey. We are innovators when it comes to agriculture, and there is opportunity now for great transformation in how are we going to grow food in an ever-growing population, and how do we turn urban centers into agricultural centers. Autonomous vehicles is another one where we have some of the world's leading experts, and how this will transform how those who are either elderly or are visually impaired or mobilely impaired can start to use autonomous vehicles to transform their lives and have access to transportation they could have never had before.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu/research.
Join us in...
This winter, why not take the short flight from London to Dublin with Aer Lingus from just $32.99 each way as part of a return trip? From coastal walks to cozy pubs and friendly locals, you'll find so much to enjoy once you're there. Smart takes a Dublin city break. Smart flies Aer Lingus. Book now at aerlingus.com. Terms and conditions apply.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
This is the TuneIn Newsreel with top news stories from today.
President Trump says the U.S. has not yet agreed to roll back tariffs as part of the trade deal with China. The president says the U.S. and China are still negotiating the trade agreement, and he says phase one will be signed in the U.S. Walt Disney shares are rallying after a strong quarter. Jonathan Hoenig at the Capitalist Pig Hedge Fund says Walt Disney has an advantage over other streaming companies.
Look what Disney's doing. It is capitalizing, for example, on its theme park business. That's what its competitors can't do. No kid is saying, I want to go to Netflix land right now. They're saying, I want to go to Disneyland. So
Beyond Meat shares are higher. Analysts at UBS are predicting plant-based protein consumption will grow by 31% through 2025. UBS says Beyond Meat and Impossible Foods are the best companies in the market. That's your Fox Business Report. I'm Ginny Cosolda, invested in you.
Hear breaking news as it happens with live around-the-clock coverage from Fox News on TuneIn.
Introducing a new podcast, ESPN Daily. When you want to go beyond your feed, when you want to get inside the score, when you want to get behind the highlight, there's ESPN Daily. Go deeper into the stories of the moment. Get the exclusive access and insider perspective that only ESPN can give you. ESPN Daily, hosted by me, Mina Kimes. Listen now to ESPN Daily on TuneIn.
Cutting for the net, scores! On the goal line, Marchand scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
You can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
College football is live on TuneIn. Listen for free to games from more than 140 schools all season long.
All the way to the checkerboard.
This Saturday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, number 1 LSU is taking on number 2 Alabama with a battle between LSU's quarterback Joe Burrow and Alabama's QB Tua Tagovailoa. Both are potential number 1 picks in the NFL draft. Listen to every call and every game of your school all season long for free on TuneIn. Just search college to listen today.
The NBA is on TuneIn Premium.
He shoots it. It's good. It's a 1-point lead. They don't have a timeout.
Each week, TuneIn picks an NBA game you just can't miss.
You're off to Wiggins, straight away on the triple try. Bingo. He knocks it down at the buzzer.
The defending champions, Toronto Raptors, are in LA to take on the red-hot LA Lakers. Tip-off is at 9:30 p.m. Eastern this Sunday. Search NBA on TuneIn to follow your favorite NBA team today.
NFL fans, the action continues this weekend on TuneIn Premium.
Hand off to Gord. Pushes forward. Touchdown!
This Sunday, TuneIn has every NFL football game starting with the New York Giants at the New York Jets at 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern and closing out Sunday night with the Vikings at the Dallas Cowboys at 8:20 p.m. Eastern.
Breaks inside the 25-20, inside the 15, the 10, the 5, touchdown!
At home or on the go, hear the home and away call of every NFL game this season on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Stocks are drifting with the S&P 500 index little change, down half a point right now at 3,084, holding close to a record, on track for a winning week. The Dow down 52 points, lower by 0.2%. NASDAQ up 14, a gain of 0.2%. Stocks drifting after President Trump said the U.S. has not agreed to a tariff rollback with China, dimming hopes for a preliminary trade deal next month. The 10-year down 3/32 yield 1.92%. Gold is down 0.5%, $14.61 the ounce, and West Texas Intermediate crude up 0.5%, $57.41 a barrel. Recapping, S&P little change, down now by 0.5 point. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
That's how you do it. Thank you so much, Charlie Pellet. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Masser along with Jason Kelly right here on Bloomberg Radio.
Yeah, California, you got me running back again.
All right, so Carol Master, you and I were in California earlier this week, first in Stanford, then in San Diego.
It's a lot warmer than it is in New York today.
It was a gorgeous place. You understand why people live and work there, and yet, there's a lot about California that is not so attractive right now, and a lot to get into.
For so much, right?
The front lines for so much. Esme Dupre joins us. She is a projects and investigations reporter for Bloomberg, joining us on the phone from Los Angeles. Her story, America's biggest problems are intensified in California. It is in the remarks section of the new issue of Bloomberg Business Week magazine. Hi, Esme. How are you?
Good, thanks. How are you? It's sunny here.
Great to have you. So tell us about kind of California right now, because it seems to be having a bit of a moment.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of California's burning type headlines from across the political spectrum. The New York Times, Fox News, even Trump has joined in, tweeting criticism of the governor, how he's handled the fires. So all of this is prompted by the past few weeks as California endures what we know as peak wildfire season. Now, there are wildfires up and down the state, or there have been. And then also there are these blackouts, millions of people left in the dark by these voluntary blackouts by utility companies like PG&E, whose power lines have been blamed for sparking massive deadly fires in the past and obviously don't want to face that situation again. So it definitely feels like California is having a moment. This is something that California is used to. It's a really powerful force in the country and the world, the most populous U.S. state, the fifth largest economy in the world. California is home to 1 in 8 Americans, so what happens here really draws a lot of attention.
When you say that, I forget. You're right, Jason. We just, came back from California, north and south, and it's a huge state, but you forget the influence and how big it is in comparison to the rest of the country. But it's the fires, it's the climate concerns, it's the .com bust, it's an electricity crisis, it's so many different things, budget problems after the Great Recession, right? It's just everything that seems to happen is on a magnitude like no other.
Yes, exactly. So right now, we're really seeing, of course, the wildfires and the blackouts, but it magnifies really what arguably, California faces, which are the two greatest potential existential threat, if you will, faced by America and the world, and that's income inequality and climate change. So California has a severe housing crisis. It's led to a severe homeless crisis. The economy is booming, but the median home price topped $600,000, so that's more than twice the national average. The poverty rate is the nation's worst when you factor into cost of living. And then again, this homeless problem. Again, California is home to 12% of the U.S. population and a quarter of the country's homeless. And most of those people don't live in shelters like, say, in New York City. So they're very, very visible, and it makes the problem very real on a day-to-day basis. And then, of course, you have climate change, which is making the fires worse. But going back to those headlines, California's burning. The truth, as usual, is really somewhere in between. California faces significant challenges, but they've also dealt with a lot of seemingly insurmountable challenges before and pulled through.
And so what's the early report card on Governor Newsom at this point in his ability to take this on? The parade of California governors is one of the most interesting sort of set of political baseball cards, I feel like, that you could collect over time. Newsom, of course, former mayor of San Francisco, I believe he understands a lot of these issues acutely that you're describing, especially when it comes to housing and homelessness. How's he doing so far?
Yeah, Newsom is facing a lot of pressure right now. He's definitely in the spotlight given all these concerns. But he's continuing to push this theme that California has pushed for a long time, which is that, a government can and should be proactive in addressing problems and can actually make a difference in people's lives. Obviously, that's not a theme that you see pushed by conservatives elsewhere, and in California, but obviously California is a very liberal democratic state. So in the past few weeks, you've seen him really tromp around the state, highlighting steps that the government has been taking to prepare for and preempt and respond to these environmental disasters. The legislature and Governor Newsom have been very active on addressing housing issues. Voters have responded by taxing themselves for homelessness. So you do see, government intervention here for sure, trying to tackle a lot of these problems. That's not to say that they're going to work. That's not to say that it makes everybody happy, but you do have a state that's facing big challenges again and trying to address them through government solutions.
What I love, Esme, is in a world where, and certainly here in the United States, we feel very frustrated often by our policymakers and their inability to maybe get, programs done. Here you have a state where the government is very active in it. And not only that, they pull in the private sector. You talk about, Facebook and Google throwing, $1 billion into the housing crisis. Apple says it's putting up $2.5 billion. So, you don't see as much public-private sector collaboration, I think, across the rest of the states, but you see it, I think, big time in California.
Yeah, certainly one thing California has going for it is, again, it's a very Democratic-led state, so you have supermajorities in the legislature and the governor's office, and I believe every statewide office is held by a Democrat, so you don't have the political, the partisan bickering that you have in Washington that really prevents things from getting done. And going back to what Facebook and Google and Apple are doing, look, these are tech giants that have definitely exacerbated California's income inequality, have exacerbated the housing issues here, so that can't be overlooked. But it's true that few other states have such private sector resources willing to deal with the problem and able to deal with the problem as opposed to leaving the state,
right,
for example.
So, Esme, one of the things that I feel like is a hallmark of your reporting is you're so good at finding and talking to real people. We spend so much time sort of talking about theory and, politicians and whatnot. But what are people on the ground saying? You talk to some really interesting folks who it feels like are emblematic of what's going on there.
Yeah, thank you. So I went down to the Easy Fire, which was just about an hour northwest of Los Angeles. It was the one where it was threatening the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library. So we heard a lot about that on the news. So one person I met was this businessman named Kurt Michael. I arrived at his business just as he was returning as well, or just shortly after he'd returned. So he has a mulch and a compost business. And it was the second time in his 20 years there that wildfire had destroyed what he'd worked so hard to build. And I asked him, is this going to make you leave? And he looked at me, like I had 12 heads and said, well, no way. I'm a Californian. I'm proud to be here. I see a dirty canvas. I'm going to clean up and repaint. It's going to look nicer than it did before. So it was this incredible strain of optimism. And then, showing the complexity of California and the world and everywhere. The next person I met was this woman, Mary Lou Shakuri. She had had to evacuate. It was actually the first time that her family had evacuated. It was very traumatic, but they also returned to their house to find that their house was totally fine. It smelled like smoke, but the property was otherwise unscathed. She had a completely different reaction to Kurt Michael. She said, I don't feel safe here anymore. I'm more scared of fires than earthquakes, and I want to get the heck out of California.
Right. It's an amazing place. Really, really well told story, and an important one, I think, for everybody to understand, because in many ways, as California goes, so goes the country, just on sheer size and scope. Esme Dupre, great to catch up with you. Fantastic story. P&I reporter for Bloomberg joining us on the phone from Los Angeles.
It's a must-read, no doubt. When Jason and I will put it out on Twitter. Coming up, a check on the bond market, and then cultivating female entrepreneurs right here on Bloomberg Radio.
They like it.
It's another Friday evening. Yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick and enjoy stunning white sand and crystal blue sea. Fly from London Gatwick to the Maldives with British Airways from £300 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun. With British Airways, incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March. Introducing a new podcast, ESPN Daily. When you want to go beyond your feed, when you want to get inside the score, when you want to get behind the highlight, there's ESPN Daily. Go deeper into the stories of the moment. Get the exclusive access and insider perspective that only ESPN can give you. ESPN Daily, hosted by me, Mina Kimes. Listen now to ESPN Daily on TuneIn.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
Want to know what's happening in right now? The latest headlines are just a tap away with Fox News Talk on TuneIn. When news breaks, get up-to-the-minute coverage on developing stories from around the world. Plus, hear all the Fox shows you watch on your TV. Listen to Fox News Talk around the clock on TuneIn.
College football is live on TuneIn. Listen for free to games from more than 140 schools all season long.
All the way to the checkerboard.
This Saturday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, number 1 LSU is taking on number 2 Alabama with a battle between LSU's quarterback Joe Burrow and Alabama's QB Tua Tagovailoa. Both are potential number 1 picks in the NFL draft. Listen to every call and every game of your school all season long for free on TuneIn. Just search college to listen today.
Start hearing more of what you want.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations, live commercial-free news, and every live NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL game. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
World 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We move into the final hour of trading. We've got stocks trading mixed, unchanged on the S&P, the Dow lower, NASDAQ is higher. 60 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell. Equities drifting after President Trump said the U.S. has not agreed to a tariff rollback with China, dimming hopes for a preliminary trade deal next month. The S&P 500 index little changed after scoring records yesterday on trade optimism. The benchmark is still on track for a 5th consecutive weekly gain, and this Friday it is up by 23.1%. Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta President Raphael Bostic says he opposed last week's interest rate cut because 2 earlier reductions had provided insurance against global risks, and the central bank needed to preserve its ammunition. He made the comment in an interview this morning that aired right here on Bloomberg Radio.
I worry a lot about the policy space that we have. We're at 1.5 to 1 3/4. That's not a lot of space. When you think historically what responses have been in the to a recession, we don't have that much space. And so I want to make sure that when we do deploy our tools, they're deployed to maximum effect in a way that leaves us with policy options moving forward.
And right now we do have the 10-year down 330 seconds at yield 1.92%. We've got more on the economy and rates coming up right here on Bloomberg Business Week. Gold is down 0.4%, $14.62 the ounce right now. West Texas Intermediate crude up 0.5%, $57.43 a barrel. After earnings, Disney shares, they're higher by 3.2%. Disney shares rallying for their biggest intraday gain in 7 months after the media giant reported fourth quarter results that beat expectations. And also, we are looking at shares of Gap. CEO Art Peck out. Gap shares, they are dropping now by 6.7%. Gold down 0.4%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil up by 0.5%, $57.42 a barrel. So again, recapping, stocks are mixed with the S&P 500 index little changed, up by 0.5 point. The Dow down 0.2%. NASDAQ up 0.2%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
This is Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, let's do a little Business Week economics. Alex Harris is here, bond reporter for Bloomberg, and Yelena Shalecheva, senior U.S. economist for Bloomberg Economics. Yelena, I want to start with you because just to continue the conversation we were starting to have before we came on air, Raphael Bostic, president of the Atlanta Fed, at an event last night on Bloomberg TV and radio this morning. I found his comments fascinating, in part because a reminder that different Fed presidents have different views, not just intellectually or theoretically, but because of the areas that they represent in many ways. And the picture that he laid out was maybe a different one than you would hear from, say, the president of the Chicago Fed or the St. Louis or Dallas in some ways.
Well, thank you for bringing it up. So yesterday was a great event at Money Marketeers, and again this morning a great interview interview on Bloomberg TV with Raphael Bostic. And you're right. He represents a region which he actually himself said represents the United States in many ways. So it's very well diversified. It's like it's very interesting that he also mentioned that it's not that bad. The economy is not that bad. It's doing okay. Businesses continue investing. They don't feel like they need to stop investing altogether. He also mentioned that his business contacts are saying next year will not be that bad either.
Right.
He sees a little bit more momentum in the economy. I asked him a question about what do you think about growth slowing down in the final quarter of this year. His own Atlanta Fed GDP tracker is showing 1% growth in the final quarter. And he said, well, my research people are telling me this will improve, and this will probably improve into the next year. And I was very surprised. I didn't think he was that hawkish, actually. He sounded a bit hawkish.
Is he usually that hawkish?
Not from what I remember. He was like, well, the economy is doing great. He's not worried about inflation in the sense that it's decelerating. So I think...
And he voted against the cut.
And well, he's not a voter.
Oh, sorry, he was against the cut. He would have voted. Thank you. Yes.
And he was like, I wouldn't even vote for this cut. So I think the picture that he sees in his region, and when he applies it to a broader economy, he's telling us that things are not as bad as some might actually think.
So it's interesting to hear his optimism.
So everything's great out there, Alex Harris.
Well, and I'm curious, how do you roll kind of what he said into your work?
I thought you were going to say, how do you roll,
Alex Harris?
The Fed is on hold, at least if you look at the pricing in Fed funds futures. I mean, there's no cut priced in the foreseeable future, and there's no hike price for the foreseeable future.
Meaning December?
No, I mean next year.
Next year.
At all. Yeah, there's nothing priced. And I think part of this is, the rhetoric coming out of the Fed speakers this week was very much that this is a Fed that will remain patient, that will remain on hold, and we'll wait to see kind of how the data plays out from here. The other interesting thing, we were having a conversation, I was talking to some people at the beginning of the week, because we're 2 weeks away from the expiring continuing resolution that'll keep the government open and funded. That's up on November 21st.
There's one of our guests, was it at Charles Schwab? Was it the Impact Conference that was reminding us, I think it was the individual we talked to who follows policy, and that talked about that's something that's on their radar. One of our guests, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's coming back on people's
Here we go again, right?
Well, and especially, and we had put out a piece earlier in the week because we were saying that if in fact the Fed is data dependent and we see a shutdown of any significant, like we had a 35-day shutdown last year, and that delayed, that put us behind on data for a few months. Like we didn't normalize. Shutdown ended at the end of January. We didn't get normalized data, like in terms of back on that schedule, until April. And, Jerome Powell had made a comment earlier in the year saying, if there are any effects from trade and tariff disagreements and spats, we're not going to see those really, for another 9 months. Well, we're kind of hitting that point that data in January and February might actually be an indicator for any sort of trade spats. Well, if we're in a shutdown, that's data that's probably going to be delayed. So now you got to wonder, how does this affect, potentially affect how the market sees this and how the Fed sees
it's one
this.
other thing to
Well, the economy is doing fine, but obviously there are a lot of risks in terms of trade tensions. We hear
but
the
that's
headlines.
Been the story all year.
Yes, but it really matters. It really matters. And if you one at 10 o'clock in the morning you get this news, and then at 3 o'clock in the afternoon you hear something totally the opposite. It's really hard.
Well, what's interesting, David Dwyer, in our year ahead, they typically do a 50 companies to watch. Well, this year they did a handful of themes to watch. I think it might have been 8 or so.
They still did 50 companies, but they sort of divided them up by themes.
Correct, exactly. And one of the main themes was U.S.-China trade and the impact that that's going to have on various companies.
The other thing you have to keep in mind, too, is European trade with the U.S.
Right.
We're expecting a decision on that next week. I mean, that's still a really big issue here. And I think it's a nice reminder that it's not solved. And even though the bond market, reacted yesterday like, oh, this is a huge breakthrough for the markets and for optimism that we could actually see something. The president reminded us very quickly that the only person who really has the final say in trade is him. And he made that clear as the 10-year went from 194, 195 all the way down to 190.
Right.
Well, but there's two major players. China also has a lot to say. So, the pushback...
Takes two to tango.
Takes two to tango. Yeah, exactly. But I will say it's interesting to see that 10-year at 193. I mean, we've crept up.
We're back to those August levels again, and I think that's what people are watching. But in terms of where it goes next, and then in terms of where the 2-10s curve steepens, I think we need to see more now. It's like people have already kind of priced in this first phase. Now you need to see all the other heady issues get resolved.
But it plays into some of the optimism that Bostic was talking about.
Sure, and for the Fed, I mean, they were worried about the inverted yield curve, and now they don't need to, at least for some time now.
It's still not that steep. I mean, it's 26 basis points. So
I was
something to be watching,
All right, take it outside. You guys, it's a great conversation. Unfortunately, we got to move on. Love you both. Alex Harris, bond reporter for Bloomberg. Yelena Shalacheva, senior U.S. economist for Bloomberg
Kelly,
Economics.
nice wrap.
I do what I can. Bob Moon's here. He does what he can with World National Headlines. Hey, Bob.
Jason, thank you. President Trump is dismissing a Chinese official's assertion that his administration has agreed to roll back some of the higher tariffs it's imposed on Chinese goods. Trump's pushback suggests negotiations may not have progressed as far as hoped between the world's two biggest economies. Still, Trump was willing to talk about where such a deal might be signed.
Well, we'll look at it different, assuming we get it. I never like to talk about things until we have them. But it could be Iowa or farm country or someplace like that. It will be in our country, but it could be someplace like that.
Steve Bannon is making his first appearance in the Roger Stone trial as a prosecution witness. The former senior Trump campaign and administration official was called earlier than expected today on the third day of testimony. Bannon was one of several officials connected to the Trump campaign who was in contact with Stone. Stone is being tried in federal court on charges of lying to Congress and witness tampering. Former Attorney General Jeff Sessions says he is running for Senate because he wants to finish work on immigration, trade, and other issues that both he and President Trump have championed. In an interview today, Sessions reiterated his support for Trump. He said he's running for the Alabama Senate seat he held for 20 years, but left to become Trump's first Attorney General. Trump has previously lashed out at Sessions over his recusal in the Russia investigation, but said he would not campaign against Sessions. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Bob Moon.
You can't be the only one who spends time examining angles.
This sort of mini deal, what would it look like?
Considering possibilities.
From a credit perspective, this is good news.
Planning for eventualities.
This company really has to get back on a growth track.
You're right. The others are here.
General Electric is such an interesting story.
Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney. Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern. On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Hi, I'm your host, Smokey Colbert, filling in for Smokey, because after 75 years of